This is the story of a human boy who was forced to abandon his humanity and live as a demon. Now, Ikki is a powerful mage who serves as a commander in the Demon King's army. With his skill and powers, he has become an invaluable member of the Demon King's army, even though he is secretly human. And secretly, I ask for your like here and your comment down below to help us with the channel's engagement. Don't forget to hype up the video, and let's keep going. During a war, the orc troops managed to breach the walls of a castle, thanks to several well-placed explosions near the base of the wall. They were carried out by Ikki. While all this is happening, he watches from above, alongside the orc leader, who is very satisfied with the performance of his troops, after following Ikki's advice. However, Ikki himself is not surprised by the outcome, since victory was practically guaranteed as soon as he was assigned to oversee the operation. Inside the castle, humans and demons are engaged in deadly combat, but the demons are far better equipped to win due to their innate strength. Thus, the human soldiers are being slaughtered. Meanwhile, the knight captain is inside the castle. He is watching his men die one by one from the safety of the castle window, and probably regretting having followed Ikki's advice to enlist as a knight. At that moment, he realizes he is not alone in the room, so he turns and discovers that Ikki has managed to sneak in. The captain knows he is practically doomed now, so he turns to Ikki and asks who he is. Ikki then introduces himself as the commander of the Demon King's 7th Immortal Brigade, and tells the captain that he only has a few options left. His soldiers are almost all dead, so Ikki tells him that he likes this territory, and that he wants it, so he can either do it the easy way or the hard way. The choice is his. The captain, not wanting to appear cowardly, tells Ikki that neither option would work for him. He launches a desperate attack, but Ikki is not surprised by this, as he had already expected to have to handle things the hard way. He then casts a close-range spell that hits the captain directly, incapacitating him. Ikki has officially won this war, but when the orc leader enters the room to congratulate him on the victory, he says that normally, a demonic commander at this moment would execute all surviving members of the army. But Ikki has other plans and instructs the orc leader to first provide aid to the Captain King, as well as to all humans who surrendered. Ikki was being observed by a witch through her crystal ball, and she is very surprised that he managed to take down the castle with just a single brigade and a week of preparation, so she becomes interested in his potential. Back at the castle, Ikki raises a barrier around himself to have a moment of privacy, and when he finally gets some privacy, he thinks to himself that he feels guilty for having sacrificed so many people, even though it was necessary to win this battle. He will never truly get used to the bloodshed associated with war, because, although it should be natural for a demon, Ikki is only a disguised human. His teacher, Romberg, is a great mage, but he also knew a lot about the world and the advanced civilization that once existed in it. One day, Romberg found Ikki when he was just a baby and decided to take him in purely for amusement. Over the years that Ikki spent with Romberg, he learned all the magic and knowledge Romberg possessed. But Romberg's last wish before dying of old age was that Ikki should never tell anyone about the ancient civilization, because people would bring disaster if they knew about it. There was another thing Romberg asked of him, which was to never be seen without his robe or mask, because if he were discovered as human, the Demon King would not spare him. Since that day, Ikki has never removed his mask, and even now he can only remove it thanks to his powerful barrier, which prevents anyone from entering the room without his permission. But unfortunately, this does not apply to people who are already inside. Ikki looks down and sees a maid hiding under the table. She begs him not to harm her, promising she will tell no one about his secret, but then she accidentally hits her head on the table and falls. Ikki checks if she is alright. She appears to be alive, but he would honestly prefer that she were dead, as he had managed to keep his identity a secret for over 20 years, until this moment. And now, the very first person to discover his secret is a clumsy maid, just as the orc leader knocks on the door, wanting to speak with Ikki, so he will have to deal with the maid problem later. Outside, the orc leader tells Ikki that they successfully managed to take the castle, but he finds it strange that Ikki is letting so many humans live. Ikki says that it is not a problem, since the new Demon King does not care about the number of deaths as long as the job is done. The orc understands, but he and the other demons had expected to massacre all the humans and burn the village to the last piece. Yet Ikki questions what the purpose of that would be, especially since if they kill everyone, no one would remain to pay taxes. Arson is the name of this city. It is a commercial city, so who would handle all the trade if they killed all the humans? And at that moment, Ikki and the orc encounter two humans who wish to speak with Ikki. The orc begins yelling at them for daring to speak directly to the great Ikki. But Ikki says it is fine and asks the village chief to speak. The city chief has already accepted that the city is under the control of the Demon King's army, so he wants to know how much they are expected to pay in taxes to the Demon King. Iki tells them to pay the usual amount they always pay, but makes it clear that if any of them resist the Demon King for any reason, there will be no mercy. At that moment, Iki senses something wrong. Moments later, he is teleported to a dark room, with a giant monster behind him, with malicious intent. Iki jumps out of the way to avoid incoming attacks, and it seems this is not the first time something like this has happened, since Iki tells the witch that he had asked her not to summon like this out of nowhere. Now that he is already here, Iki decides to defeat the monster using his staff to cast a powerful spell that destroys the golem in a single strike. The witch is impressed by Iki's skill, as she had been quite confident in the strength of that golem. And finally, we learn her name is Sephiroth. She is higher ranking than Iki in the Demon King's army, and also the only demon who knows he is truly human. Iki tells her that next time she should send a messenger when she wants to speak with him, but she finds it amusing to catch him by surprise. Iki simply accepts that he will have to continue dealing with Sephiroth's pranks, so he asks if she summoned him because of the battle with Arsanin. She says it was not for that, since his relatives could not have told her everything she needed to know about the battle. She is perfectly fine with the way Iki took control of the city, with how he chose to spare the humans, but then Iki wonders why she went through the trouble of calling him. Sephiroth then informs him that the Demon King wishes to see him personally. Iki is shocked to hear this, since he would be the first brigade commander to have the honor of meeting the Demon King, but he still wonders why the Demon King would want to see him. Sephiroth assumes it is because of his impressive feat of capturing Arsanin, so she will take him to the Demon King's castle immediately. Iki did not expect to go right away, but he places his hand on Sephiroth's shoulder, and she teleports them both. Back at the castle, the maid finally regains consciousness. She stands up and tries to move away, but in doing so, she realizes she is still trapped inside Iki's barrier. She knows there is no way to pass through a barrier like that, so she looks around the room and finds a plate of food along with a note left by Iki. He wrote for her to eat the food and wait for him to return. So the maid does exactly that, and it is so delicious that she ends up devouring the entire plate. At the same time, Iki and Sephiroth have just arrived at the Demon King's castle, and the strong miasma surrounding the castle is affecting Iki slightly, since he is human, but he overcomes it and continues walking toward the castle. At the gate, guards are positioned, so Iki asks Sephiroth if the guards check everyone who arrives at the castle. She informs him that they indeed inspect everyone who comes here, and Iki is quite concerned, because his identity will be discovered as soon as the guard forces him to remove his mask, but Sephiroth says she will handle it. She uses a bit of her magic to surround Iki with a terrifying aura, and as soon as he approaches the guards, they have nothing but respect for his power. They know that Iki is Romberg's grandson, and with the training of such a powerful mage, it is no surprise that Iki is also so powerful. Iki and Sephiroth are granted permission to enter the castle, and after walking for a while, Iki asks how much longer until they reach the audience chamber. She says they are almost there, but Iki really wishes he could fly like Sephiroth in a situation like this. He has always envied her flight, and although he can use the spell, he does not have as much control over it as she does. So the most he can do is make a very high jump. They finally arrive at the audience chamber, and Sephiroth tells Iki to wait outside while she speaks with the Demon King first. As soon as she enters, Iki thinks about how the current Demon King, Darikutan, managed to turn the war around and give an advantage to the demons by participating in just a single battle. He is the strongest demon, and rumors say he is a cruel and cold lord, so he would probably kill anyone he came to dislike. On the other hand, he is also known to recognize talent, despite any weaknesses someone may have. Iki hears Sephiroth calling him in, so he enters the throne room, and upon greeting the Demon King, he is surprised to discover that she is actually a girl. Darikutan praises Iki for his ability to capture Sonin in just 1 week, and he thanks her for the kind words, but does not think he deserves so much credit. Darikutan finds Iki's humility quite strange, as it reminds her of how a human would act. Iki immediately regrets it and keeps his mouth open, almost revealing his disguise. Fortunately, Sephiroth helps him, explaining that Iki was raised by the great mage Romberg, who was known for his humility, which would explain where Iki learned to be humble. She also believes that Iki may be smarter than she initially thought, which is why he chose to avoid killing humans unnecessarily even after conquering Sonin. But at that moment, Iki is already regretting it, as he did not kill the humans. And now he is drawing unwanted attention to himself. He asks permission to speak and explains to Darikutan that he spared the humans, because although they may fear terror, they would not obey him for long. So he thought it would be better to avoid killing them as much as possible, so that he could maintain their sense of normalcy and keep them productive. Darikutan asks if this was also Romberg's opinion, and Iki says yes. He has only been speaking with her for a few minutes, but he can already tell that Darikutan must have extensive knowledge about ancient civilizations that Romberg told Iki about. She used that knowledge to form the Demon King's army that exists today. Darakuten teleports to the front of her throne, saying that he is definitely different from most demons. But next time they meet, she would like to see what his face looks like under the mask. Then she teleports behind him and says she hopes to see more good results from him in the future. And as soon as she leaves the room, Ikki faints from nervousness. Sephiroth mocks him for being so nervous in front of Darakuten. But although he is a strong and powerful mage, he is still a coward. What made him so nervous was the fact that Darakuten noticed that the mask was not his real face. But at least she still does not know that he is human. Sephiroth also mentions that he will receive a reward from Darakuten for his achievements. Although she would not classify it exactly as a reward, sometime later, Ikki returns to Arsenal to check on the maid, and sees that she has eaten all the food he left for her. So he looks around and finds her sleeping behind the table. He wakes her up, and as soon as she realizes that Ikki is back, she starts begging for her life and asks him not to harm her. Ikki tells her to calm down, as he plans not to kill her, but first wants to know her name. She says her name is Sadi. The slaves there are called by numbers, but her mother used to call her that. Ikki says he cannot just let Sadi go now that she knows he is human, but she promises she will never tell anyone about it. Ikki believes she will keep her mouth shut, but to ensure that she does not reveal the secret, he tells her that she will have to serve as his maid from now on. Sadi is more than happy to be his maid, if it means she can live. So everything is settled. The next day, Ikki is officially crowned ruler of a place called Ailas. And the day before, Sephiroth had informed him that this was the reward that the Demon Lord had prepared for him. This is a city on the front line, so Ikki's job will be to rebuild the city and double the tax revenue. Ikki does not like this very much, especially because Sephiroth was the one who conquered the city and completely destroyed all the walls, leaving it unprotected. Since this city is on the front line, they need to have many walls ready in case of a human army attack. But when Ikki asks Jiren how long it will take to build them, he says it will take 6 months at best. 6 months is far too long for a city to be without walls, but with only human workers, there is no way they could do it faster. However, Ikki believes he has a better way to reduce this time to just 1 month, which is to use both demon and human workers. Jiren has never seen humans and demons working together in this way, and Ikki had the brilliant idea of having shifts of only 8 hours so that wall repairs could continue 24 hours a day. He also pays the workers a decent wage to keep their morale high. So Jiren is convinced that Ikki is the greatest triumph of the Demon King's army, and that he is simply destined to become the next Demon King. The war between humans and demons continues, but at the moment, the demons are at an advantage, so Darakuten is very satisfied. However, their reports show that the humans are forming an alliance with the neighboring kingdom, and if this happens, it could turn the tide of the war. So Darakuten decides to entrust the success of the attack to Ikki. Meanwhile, in the human kingdom, a knight known as Alistar has been summoned to help the kingdom and reclaim Ailas, since they could not afford to lose another fortress. As soon as his mission is assigned, he sets off to carry it out. And at the same time, Ikki and Sadi are also in the kingdom on a mission. But Sadi gets a little distracted by a game with a little tiger happening nearby. The man says all she has to do is guess which cup the ball is under, and if she guesses correctly, he will double the amount she bets. Sadi makes her choice, and the man asks her to place her bet. But unfortunately, Sadi has no money to bet, since Ikki does not trust her with his finances. And rightly so, the girl has nothing, and is already playing the little tiger game. The swindler becomes furious, since she wasted his time. But then he looks at Sadi again, and says she can pay him another way if she loses. At that moment, all the cups start floating in the air, and it is revealed that the ball was never under any of them. So all the other people who lost money to the man become furious and threaten him to recover their money. In the midst of the commotion, Ikki grabs Sadi and says she should not have left his side as his maid, so she apologizes, saying she was just curious. At that moment, she notices that Ikki is wearing his new clothes, and he explains that they are on a mission to scout the enemy, so they cannot come here dressed in their demonic disguises. They begin walking through the city, and while doing so, a platoon of soldiers comes down the street, and that is all Ikki needed to see to confirm that the kingdom is indeed forming an alliance. Sadi is worried that the Demon King's army might be defeated again because of this alliance, but Ikki expected her to be rooting for the demon's defeat, since she is practically trapped at this moment. Sadie explains that since her mother was a slave in human society, she would never be treated as anything but a slave, and would probably end up like the indigent children of that region. In this case, Ikki tells Sadie that she does not need to worry, because the current Demon King's army is the strongest and wisest ever, so they will not lose easily. They continue walking down the street, and when Ikki hears someone shouting for them to stop, he turns and discovers that the swindler is trying to confront them. He is angry since Ikki ruined his trick, so he brought this big guy to try to rob Ikki in revenge for what he did. Iki looks around and sees no one is watching, so he decides to give the swindler a little lesson. In an instant, Iki casts a spell to freeze the big guy's legs and then launches several ice projectiles toward the swindler. The swindler demands that Iki remove the ice so he can continue robbing, but Iki simply pokes him in the shoulder to show that he is not afraid to hurt him if he does not obey. The man finally understands the situation he is in and agrees to tell Iki everything he wants to know. Iki then asks him what all the soldiers in the city are for, since they all seem to be in a hurry. The man initially says he does not know anything, and Iki threatens to kill him immediately, so he provides some information about the Alliance and how the army of Rosaria is eager to gain war merit before the Alliance gets involved. Iki understands why they want to do this, since a higher number of deaths automatically earns them more respect in any strategic meeting. However, if they fail in their mission, it would put Rosaria in a terrible position. He concludes that this is where they plan to launch their attack, so the swindler tells him that it is only a location they could be targeting now, and this location would be Avelia's. And according to the report, Avelia's currently has a huge hole in its wall, so it is guaranteed that it is in the poorly defended area. Iki now has a good sense of the situation he is in, and since the swindler gives him some useful information, he leaves the man alone. But before that, he warns that he never said he would get rid of the ice. And when they return to the office, Iki sits at his desk to finish some paperwork. Sadi brings him some tea to help him relax. At that moment, Asafru interrupts everything, demanding to know where Iki has been for the past few hours, as she was getting very worried about him. He calmly explains that he was busy exploring the kingdom of Rosaria, but his reasonable response does not make her feel any better. Then she starts chasing Sadi and questions why Iki has a human by his side. Sadi introduces herself as Iki's maid, but Asafru ignores her and casually calls Sadi an ugly bitch. Sadi becomes quite irritated at that moment, so she tells the demon to take her hands off Iki, as he is far too tired to deal with bitches at the moment. This sparks a long argument between the two, with both accusing each other of trying to seduce Iki. Iki is smart enough not to get involved, while the troops of Rosaria gather outside Avelia's, preparing to attack. They find it strange that there are almost no guards near the wall, but they assume this is simply due to a lack of manpower to effectively defend the fortress. They soon inform Alistar that they have completed preparations for the attack and are ready to fire on his command. Alistar gives the order to fire. However, as soon as she does, several skeleton soldiers emerge from the ground and surround Alistar's forces. The soldiers prepare to defend the sighted equipment, since mere skeletons should not be a match for them. But suddenly, one of the soldiers is struck by a shot from nowhere, and from that moment everything goes downhill for the humans. Alistar realizes that there is no way to win this battle, and orders an immediate retreat. Iki and Gyron watch everything from afar, atop the wall, and praise Alistar for making the smart decision to withdraw, although the only reason they managed to win this battle was Iki's prior reconnaissance mission. However, while they were not paying attention, an assassin managed to sneak up behind Iki, shooting an arrow directly into his back, causing him to fall to the ground and faint. Meanwhile, the general was just informed that Alistar was forced to retreat from the battle due to unforeseen circumstances. The soldier tries to explain that the Demon King's army had prepared an ambush before their arrival, but the general does not accept the decision and orders that Alistar be imprisoned for losing. The soldier realizes this is a rather foolish decision, so he tries to explain that Alistar is one of the greatest commanders in the kingdom. He is saying that wanting to throw her in prison for a single defeat will only ruin the morale of the soldier, and it will also negatively affect their future battles. But the general does not care and insists that she must be punished for failing the mission he sent her on. Back in Avelia's, Iki wakes up in bed after recovering from his injury, but he finds Sephiroth sleeping beside him, so he has many questions to ask. First, he wants to know why Sephiroth is in bed with him, but she avoids the question and says that she saved his life. But she is making the situation seem very suspicious, and finally Iki convinces her to be serious and tell what actually happened, since he does not remember how he ended up like that. She then informs Iki that she healed him after he was struck in the back by an arrow. The injury was devastating, but thanks to her healing, there should not even be a scar until now. Continuing, she mentions that reports say no humans were killed during the attack. She knows that Iki is averse to killing people when unnecessary, but he could earn the Demon King's suspicion again if he continues acting this way. Iki understands Sephiroth's argument and says that he is trying to find a way for humans and demons to live together without having to fight, so killing people unnecessarily would only hinder his plan. Sephiroth respects Iki's dedication to finding peace between the races, so she sets the matter aside for now. She tells Iki to rest a bit since he is still human, after all. After Sephiroth leaves, Iki takes a look at the arrow that was used against him. According to what he was told, he was hit from behind, which means that someone had to infiltrate the castle to reach him. Or it was a betrayal from someone very close. At that moment, Iki hears a knock on the door, so he puts his skeleton mask back on. And as Sadi and Lilith enter to check on him, both show that they are very worried about him. But they were still arguing over which of them would seduce Iki. Then Lilith tells Sadi to keep her distance from Iki while she snuggles up to his arm. However, Sadi also wants to get close to Iki, so Lilith starts fighting again. Fortunately, Jyrn sees her struggle and quickly grabs Lilith before throwing her out of the room and locking the door. Lilith starts banging on the door, asking to come in, but Jyrn knows she is bothering Iki, so he keeps her outside. Iki thanks him for his help and asks a favor, as he wants to know where she is currently. Jyrn promises to investigate. So after a few hours of research, Iki is informed that Alistar has been imprisoned for failing to recover the fortress. This was supposed to be a simple secret mission to find Alistar, but unfortunately, Lilith followed him here, and begins warning Iki that humans can be quite violent sometimes, so it is not very safe to go there personally. Iki thinks it will be fine, since there is something he wants to ask Alistar personally, but he also does not remember asking Lilith to come with him. Lilith says it will be more interesting if the two go together, and after they finish the mission, they can have as much fun as they want. Also, Sadi can accompany him on his last mission, so it would be unfair if she did not join this one. Iki does not even want to argue about it, so he allows her to accompany him this time, but she must keep up with his pace. They finally reach the front gate of the prison, and it does not appear to be particularly well guarded, so Lilith believes she could probably infiltrate it alone, but Iki stops her, saying he does not want to cause trouble this time. Instead, he wants them to enter and exit as quickly as possible and as peacefully as possible. However, Lilith had already knocked out the guards by the time he finished speaking. They enter the place, and it is much larger than Iki imagined, so it may take a while to find Alistar's cell. However, Lilith has a better idea and simply threatens the prison warden to hand over the keys and tell them where Alistar is being held. She is apparently on the top floor, but as Iki and Lilith are about to go up, the rest of the guards appear, due to the screams they heard from the warden earlier. Lilith tells Iki to go ahead without her while she deals with the guards. But before Iki leaves, he reminds her that he does not want any unnecessary bloodshed. Lilith promises that she will not kill anyone, but as Iki is leaving, he hears the guards screaming in pain with multiple broken bones. He ignores this for now and climbs the stairs until he reaches the cell where Alistar should be, but he is shocked to find it completely empty. At that moment, the girl sneaks up from behind and tries to stab him in the back, but he manages to dodge and immobilize her on the ground. He realizes that this girl is actually Alistar, so he stands up and says he wants to ask a question. He wants to know if she sent an assassin to the castle to kill him during the last battle, because if it was not Alistar, this could only mean that he has a traitor in his hands. Instead of answering immediately, Alistar approaches Iki and asks if he is really a demon, since he does not seem like one to her. Iki tries to pretend he does not understand, but when the guards start climbing the stairs after him, he gets distracted. Then Alistar takes the opportunity to point the knife at his throat and ask once more if he is really a demon. She wants to know if Iki is a demon or not, so even as the guards approach him, she refuses to let him move until she gets her answer. Since she does not want him to move, Iki says he will not move, but that does not stop him from casting a spell. Then, before Alistar realizes what is happening, Iki says something in an unknown language, and everyone freezes in place. Then Iki approaches the guards and knocks them down with a wind spell, and in the next moment, another guard sneaks up behind Iki. He tries to attack him with his mace, but Iki manages to dodge and, once safe, uses magic to pin the guard to the bridge's railing and finally throws him to his death. However, before he hits the ground, Iki casts another spell to soften his fall. Alistar cannot understand why Iki would go to so much trouble to save a simple human, but the damage to the bridge was greater than Iki expected, and Alistar cannot move, so the railing above her breaks, and she ends up falling to her death. However, just like with the last man, Iki saves Alistar before she hits the ground. Alistar is even more confused than before, since it makes no sense at all for a demon to save her life. But Iki ignores her and properly introduces himself this time. He says he is the commander of the 7th Army of the Demon King, and Alistar realizes he must be the general who defended Avelias against the backdrops. Iki uses the fact that he is a demon commander as proof that he could not be human, since the Demon King's army would never be foolish enough to allow a human to become a high-ranking officer in its army. Alistar now believes that Iki is a demon, so Iki repeats his question. He asks Alistar if she was the one who sent the assassin, but she stubbornly stubbornly refuses to say anything. She is a proud knight of the kingdom, so she would rather die than provide any information that could be useful to the enemy. Iki realizes she will not give the answers he seeks, so he simply approaches Alistar and begins using his mind-reading magic on her. Meanwhile, Lilith enters to check on him and becomes furious to see Iki flirting with a human while she is right there. She tries to make Iki embrace her, but he has already obtained all the information he needs from Alistar's mind, so he leaves. As he and Lilith are leaving, Alistar calls him and asks why he went through the trouble of breaking into the prison if he was going to leave peacefully. Iki replies that he has no reason to stay any longer, since he now knows that Alistar was not behind the assassination. While reading her mind, he saw some of her thoughts, so he tells Alistar she should not feel so bad for losing the battle for Ailas, as it is important for a commander like her to learn from her mistakes and move forward. After that, he tells Lilith to get ready for them to leave, but before that, she suggests that she and Iki go somewhere private to have a little fun. However, Iki interrupts and immediately opens a portal to teleport them back to the castle. Shortly after they leave, Alistar is left with many questions about what just happened. Back at the mansion, Iki is greeted by Sadi. Upon his return, he tells her he has a present. She is curious to see what it is, so she approaches him, and Iki pours a bag of rice into her hands. Sadi has never seen rice before, so she has no idea what it is, leading Iki to explain that he found it in the capital of Lassos and that it would help maintain productivity in Ailas. He had been ordered to find a way to double the city's tax revenue. Although Ailas already produced a lot of wheat, if they switched to growing rice, he could increase the productivity of the entire city. Sadi does not fully understand what productivity means, so Jyrn takes it upon himself to explain it to her. He tells her that they can grow more rice than wheat, which also means they won't need as many farmers to help with the crops, freeing up people to do other things with their time. Overall, Ailas' productivity will gradually increase, and eventually the city will become wealthy. Iki asks Sadi if she understood everything he said, but her brain is still trying to process the meaning of productivity. So the basic economics lesson is completely wasted. He simplifies it, saying it means people will be able to eat plenty of food, and he will be able to collect a lot of tax money in the process. Sadi finally understands Iki's point and gets to work. He wants Sadi to try cooking something with rice. She has never cooked rice before, so she asks Iki what she should do with it. However, he has no idea either, as he has never seen rice before. Sadi is surprised that there are things Iki does not know, but she still does not know what to do with the rice. So Iki tells her to figure out the rest while he takes care of some important matters in the city. He trusts completely that she will manage. A few minutes later, Iki calls Jyrn to gather all his soldiers and army in the courtyard. Once this is done, he begins thinking about what he knows so far. The arrow used in the assassination attempt belongs to Alistar's army, but he read in her mind that she did not know about any assassination attempt, which could only mean one thing: someone tried to attack him and make it look like it was Alistar. Although he dislikes suspecting his soldiers, he must also face the fact that there is likely a spy among them. He begins using his mind-reading magic to examine the minds of everyone gathered, and after checking everyone, he finds a panicked goblin, hoping not to be caught. Once Iki's suspicion is confirmed, he teleports directly in front of the goblin and accuses him of being the spy. Sometime later, Iki goes to Sephiroth's castle to ask for some advice, but he ends up teleporting while Sephiroth is taking a bath. She doesn't seem to mind much and is naked in front of Iki, but Iki cares a lot and tells her he will wait outside. Before he leaves, Sephiroth asks if there is a traitor in his army, which catches Iki's attention, since he hadn't told anyone about the goblin spy. So he asks how she knew, and Sephiroth says she just guessed. Iki then tells her that the traitor behind everything was Jassy, the one-eyed goblin. Sephiroth is not surprised to hear this, as she had suspected Jassy for a long time. Iki asks what he should do now. She gets up and says they will make Jassy pay the price for his betrayal. Meanwhile, in Ailas, Jassy is informed by a subordinate that Iki recently went to see Sephiroth. He doesn't understand how Iki could recover so quickly after being shot in the back. But there's more news for him, as another subordinate approaches and says they have lost contact with their spy in Iki's army. Jassy knows this is bad news, as it probably means Iki discovered his little scheme. So he decides to gather his forces and attack Iki before he is eliminated. However, to his horror, he is soon informed that Iki is in the streets looking for him. Jassy goes out to meet Iki, acting friendly and saying that Iki should have warned him if he was going to appear so suddenly. Iki replies that he happened to be in the area and wanted to visit Jassy alone. However, Jassy appears with his entire squad, so Iki asks if he's planning to start a war or something. Jassy tells Iki that this is his territory, so Iki has no business being there. He also mentions that Iki was injured some time ago, so he must be losing his advantage as a commander and let himself be hit by an arrow so easily. Iki agrees and says that he was indeed careless on that occasion, but never expected to be betrayed by someone on his team, so it was unpredictable. Knowing that Jassy is the traitor, Jassy stops acting friendly and tells Ikki that he was careless to come alone, as Jassy's army is going to tear him apart now. Ikki is pleased to know that Jassy brought his entire army to attack him, as it means he can simply wipe them all out at once. Jassy looks up at the sky, astonished, as Sephiroth unleashes a destructive spell. She loves using this spell so much that she forgets to warn Ikki to get out of the blast radius, though she is confident he will be fine. Meanwhile, Ikki is not fine at all, as he is forced to hide behind a building to avoid being blown up by the spell. He asks Sephiroth to limit the spell's power so they can rebuild this part of the city later, but she obviously ignores his request, as the power is too great. After the first series of explosions, Sephiroth begins the second phase of the plan, ordering her skeleton soldiers to kill all the goblins who survive. While Jassy watches his men die, Ikki teleports behind him and offers a choice. He can surrender now or surrender after everyone is dead. After seeing what Ikki is truly capable of, Jassy foolishly orders his men to try to kill Ikki. Ikki calmly uses a wind spell to push away the two attacking him from the front, but while doing this, another goblin tries to attack from behind. However, Ikki had already prepared a shield to protect himself. He proceeds to eliminate the rest of the goblins with his magic, and while all this happens, Jassy flees, as he never really cared about his soldiers. However, before he can escape, he is intercepted by one of Sephiroth's monsters, so he is forced to use a smoke bomb to distract it and flee into an alley. He sneaks into a portal and appears in the forest, confident that he has tricked Ikki and Sephiroth. But just as he is about to descend a secret path, Ikki launches a fireball. Jassy asks how he managed to find him, since no one knows about this secret path except him. Ikki explains that he had been following Jassy with one of his familiars all this time. While Ikki asks Jassy to surrender, since there is no way he can win, Jassy decides to attack him. But his punches are too weak to penetrate Ikki's shield spell, so Ikki easily takes him down. Jassy is tied up with magical vines and suspended so he cannot escape, and he finally admits defeat. He explains why the Demon King holds Ikki in such high regard. He personally admits that he believes Ikki has a lot of talent, and for that, he makes a proposal. He wants Ikki to join him so they can take control of the Demon King's army and restore things to the way they were before. He complains that, although demons naturally take pleasure in subjugating and killing humans, Dariokin forbade any of them from killing humans without a good reason. There are many demons who dislike the way she acts, so Jassy invites Ikki to help him dethrone her, since apparently she is unfit to be the Lord. Ikki obviously refuses, so Jassy releases one of his hands and throws a knife at Ikki. Ikki easily dodges, but feels insulted that Jassy actually thinks that would work against him. He begins questioning Jassy about who else is planning to overthrow the Demon King, but Jassy refuses to reveal any information. Sephiroth soon appears, ready to torture Jassy as much as necessary to get the information, but Ikki pleads with her to let him try to obtain it peacefully, as he doesn't want to hurt anyone excessively. Sephiroth complains about his methods, saying they take too long, so she decides to take drastic measures. At that moment, Jassy starts turning purple and screaming in pain, which is surprising, as Sephiroth hasn't done anything yet. This can only mean that Jassy was poisoned by the other demons in his group to prevent him from revealing their secrets. Ikki tries to use an antidote spell, but the poison is too strong, so Jassy will die sooner or later. Before dying, Sephiroth asks if he still wants to protect the identities of the demons who poisoned him without a second thought. Jassy then agrees to tell her who the leaders of the rebellion are so she can take revenge for him. As soon as they obtain this information, Sephiroth and Ikki go to meet Dariokutin. They inform her that a rebellion is being led by the third commander of the division, Bastion. And since Bastion is being accused of treason, Dariokutin wants to hear what he has to say in his defense. Bastion claims that Sephiroth and Ikki are simply trying to frame him, and that's why they killed Jassy to keep him quiet. He also claims that Sephiroth is trying to steal his third corpse, but all these exaggerated accusations only serve to enrage Sephiroth. Dariokutin tells Sephiroth to calm down, as she herself will handle the situation. She declares that the more power a demon possesses, the more thirsty for power they become. This is the ambition that defines demons, so she cannot in good conscience punish a demon for seeking power with ambition. That said, Dariokutin is not foolish, and she is well aware that Bastion has been blatantly lying, so she would not fall for his accusation. She is also aware of how loyal Sephiroth still is to her. However, Dariokutin acknowledges that it is Sephiroth's responsibility that Jassy betrayed the army, as she should have maintained the loyalty of her troops. Sephiroth accepts this responsibility with respect, so according to Hemonian law, Daryokutin should eliminate both of them. However, she does not, as it would be a waste to lose two important commanders at the same time. Instead, Daryokutin says they will have a duel, and whoever wins may live. Some time later, Sephiroth is preparing for the duel, and the Demon King has just sent her the details of the competition. She then explains that the duel will be fought using magical dolls. As part of the rules, neither she nor Bastion can participate personally. Both will control 50 dolls, and victory will be declared when one side eliminates all of the enemy's dolls. This seems a bit too complicated for a duel, since Daryokutin could have simply made them fight to the death. But Sephiroth assumes that the Demon King simply wants to test their skills as commanders. Still, this does not make the situation any less unusual. But there's one thing Sephiroth forgot to mention. Daryokutin made a provision allowing the commanders to appoint a substitute to fight for them. She chose Ikki as her representative in the duel, with her own life on the line. Ikki asks if she's really sure she doesn't want to handle it herself. But Sephiroth says that they have a much higher chance of winning this way, since the duel is a competition of skill between the commanders. She believes Ikki's tactical ability is far superior to hers, although Sephiroth is much more powerful than Ikki in direct combat. This time she is trusting her life in his hands. Ikki doesn't like the idea of having to fight for Sephiroth's survival, but now he has no choice, so he decides to give his best. Ikki is taken to see the war dolls he will command, and according to what he was told, all of these dolls have the same strength and follow their commander's orders to the letter. Therefore, the only decisive factor in this duel will be the leadership and strategy abilities of their commanders. They can also equip the dolls with weapons as they see fit, but Ikki doesn't believe that a simple sword will be enough to guarantee victory. Sometime later, he's back in his office, trying to think of good formations for his doll. When Sadi enters, he offers her a cup of tea. Since she's there, Ikki takes the opportunity to ask what she would do if she had to win a fight. Sadi admits that she has no idea, since she wouldn't want to fight in the first place. Ikki agrees that resolving disputes without fighting is the best path, but sometimes the opponent is only satisfied when the confrontation happens. So hypothetically, he wants to know what she would do in that situation. Sadi says she doesn't have much battle experience and says she would choose a broom as her preferred weapon. Ikki smiles and says she's right after all. The best weapon is the one that allows you to keep your distance from the opponent while still being able to attack them. Just as a sword is better than a dagger, and a bow is even better than a sword because it allows attacks from afar. But of course, Bastion would also know these tactics, so he would likely try to employ the same strategy. Sadi mentions that her old master used to say that crossbows were incredible weapons in battle. Ikki thinks that's a good idea, since they could pierce metal armor and are effective and easier to use than bows. However, that still won't be enough. Ikki needs something far more powerful than crossbows. He comments that he would like to use the Oppenheimer method against them, but he doesn't have the necessary materials for that. So he opts for the second best option, firearms. Sadi has never heard of them and asks if these weapons are really strong. Ikki assures her they are, since no sword can overcome gunpowder. These weapons allow attacks from hundreds of meters away without the enemy being able to retaliate. Odd. Sadi asks Ikki if he can really make something like that. He admits that he might not be able to do it alone, but he has a plan. Since Sephiroth is an exceptional alchemist, he is confident that Sephiroth can manufacture some of these weapons in a short time. However, when he asks her to do it, Sephiroth responds directly, saying she can't do that. Ikki tries to explain that it's just an iron cylinder with gunpowder to launch a bullet, but Sephiroth completely ignores him and starts inviting him to swim with her. Meanwhile, Bastion has just been informed that Ikki will be taking Sephiroth's place as the commander in the duel, although his subordinate assumes that Sephiroth must be very afraid of Bastion or something. Bastion believes she must have some kind of plan in mind, though he doesn't yet know what it is. For now, he lets his subordinate know that he's truly impressed with the newly forged sword. The subordinate explains that it was made with a dragon tooth and can produce enough to equip all the soldiers with one, but Bastion says he will need far more than 50 swords for what he plans. Meanwhile, Ikki has just left the pool with Sephiroth and can't believe how calm she is, even knowing that his failure would mean her death. At that moment, a courier approaches Ikki to thank whoever sent him, but soon he's shocked to discover that the person is Daryokutin. This is bad for Ikki, as he isn't wearing his mask, but he tries to stay calm and pretend, hoping she doesn't recognize him. Daryokutin drops a bag on the ground and tells Ikki to open it. When he does, he's surprised to see that the bag contains several explosive wands, exactly the type of material he had been looking for. She knew Ikki was trying to get some of these explosives, so she personally took the trouble to provide them. Ikki tries to deny it, as he doesn't want her to know how much he understands about them. But Daryokutin says there's no use lying, since she knew he was human. Romberg had told her everything about Iki a long time ago, so Daryokuten knew from the start who he really was. Surprised, Iki asks why. Knowing this, she still hasn't eliminated him immediately. Daryokuten responds that she let him live because of her desire. No matter how much power she possesses, she won't be able to achieve her goal without capable allies to fight by her side. Iki then asks what her desire is, and Daryokuten explains that she wishes to build a peaceful world. And for that, she needs as many skilled people as possible, and wants Iki to help achieve this goal. Iki says that he will be honored to serve her, and Daryokuten is pleased with his response. Shortly after, she teleports away, and after that, Iki takes the weapons to Sephiroth so she can examine them. As soon as she sees them, Sephiroth finally understands the concept of firearms and asks Iki how she should make the bullets. Iki explains that they are just metal balls, so Sephiroth conjures one, but it is too large to fit into the gun barrel. He tells her it needs to be small enough to slide into the barrel, and Sephiroth understands what she needs to do. Although she complains that making small things always gives her terrible acne, she ends up creating it, and there is a huge explosion, but Sephiroth doesn't feel any trace of magic. Iki explains that it's probably due to the gunpowder in development. Fiorentina appears and tells Iki that she has finished producing the powder he requested, and reassures him that it is indeed gunpowder. Then Iki asks Sephiroth if she has finished the bullets, and this time the ones she made are perfect. He asks her to make another 500, and Sephiroth agrees to provide them, though she delegates all the work to Fiorentina, since she doesn't want to bother making anything herself. Iki apologizes to her, as he will need her to handle both the gunpowder and the bullets, since Sephiroth is avoiding the task. But Fiorentina says she's used to it. After all, Sephiroth never wants to do her own work. On the day of the duel, the stadium is packed with Hymonios eager for action. Bastion begins mocking Iki, laughing at the fact that his dolls are only equipped with shields, while his are fully armored and ready for combat. Bastion asks Iki what Sephiroth is doing now and if she is planning anything else, but in any case, it doesn't matter to him, as he believes he will win regardless. His war puppets are covered from head to toe in Damascus steel, which means that no sword or arrow attack will be able to penetrate them. The material was a gift from Daryokuten, so Bastion believes she must be taking sides in this duel. Iki, on the other hand, understands that Daryokuten was thinking of giving both sides such powerful equipment, perhaps wanting a fair fight, or maybe she was simply testing their abilities. In any case, he thinks he can always ask her about her intentions after winning. The match then officially begins, and the rules are announced once again. Each commander has 50 dolls, and whoever destroys all of the enemy dolls first will be declared the winner, while the loser will die. With that settled, the signal to start the duel is given, and Bastion immediately orders his archer dolls to fire at Iki's troops. Iki orders his dolls to raise their shields, and although several arrows are blocked, some dolls are hit. After that, Bastion commands his melee dolls to advance and begins a full-scale attack. They charge forward and start massacring Iki's troops, while Bastion laughs confidently, thinking that Iki is doing nothing but defending himself. After a few minutes, a large number of Iki's dolls have already been destroyed, but Daryokuten, observing from the darky balcony, realizes that the battle isn't over yet. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoes through the arena. The remaining dolls of Iki begin firing their firearms, now that Iki has initiated his counterattack. It doesn't take long for his dolls to easily decimate Bastion's troops. Bastion doesn't even understand what's happening, and within moments, all of Bastion's dolls are on the ground, defeated, and victory belongs to Iki. Soon, the Demon Queen, Daryokuten, descends from her seat to announce the final outcome. With her typical calm, she declares that as a gentle ruler, she prepared two options for Bastion. Either he kills himself or she will do it, and she assures that it will hurt a lot. However, Bastion reveals that he had a backup plan in case he lost. In a sudden move, he orders an archer to shoot an arrow at Daryokuten's back, but contrary to expectations, she anticipates the attack and catches the arrow in mid-air before it even reaches her. What she didn't anticipate, however, was that a high-powered explosive was attached to the arrow. The explosion is so devastating that Daryokuten is thrown backward by the force of the impact. Then Bastion triggers further explosions in the stands, killing several spectators and clearing the way for his undead soldier. Now, he declares himself the new Demon King, and the skeletons under Bastion's command begin attacking all the ogres on the stage. And for some reason, the ogres seem to have forgotten how to fight. They just run and are taken down one by one. Bastion laughs, ordering his troops to kill everyone who resists, proclaiming himself the new ruler of the demon realm. In the midst of his frenzied speech, Bastion turns to Iki, saying it's only a matter of time before the Demon King's army align, and recognizes him as the new Lord of Demons. Then he offers Iki a new chance to join his side without fighting, saying he acknowledges his talent and value, and even offers Iki full command of the 7th Immortal Division as a bonus. Iki calmly responds that the offer is indeed tempting, but that Bastian is in no position to promise anything, since he will never be able to become the Lord of Demons. Bastian laughs at Iki's naivety, thinking him foolish for refusing his offer while surrounded by an entire army ready to attack. But even with enemy troops ahead and skeletons approaching from behind, Iki remains completely calm. With a single gesture, he casts a powerful wind spell, sweeping away and shredding the skeletons advancing toward him. Furious, Bastian orders the remaining soldiers to kill Iki immediately. They advance relentlessly, but Iki raises his hand, conjuring dozens of black spears that impale all enemies as they approach. Unable to get close, one of the skeletons decides to risk everything and sets its own head on fire to use as a weapon. But even after literally sacrificing its own head, it completely misses the target, and a few seconds later is vaporized by Iki's magic. Although his firepower is strong enough to hold back the army, Iki still doesn't want to be fully surrounded, so he casts a spell to fly through the skies while hundreds of arrows are fired at him. Once he finally finds a strategic position, Iki begins casting a massive offensive spell. He annihilates a large portion of Bastian's army in a single instant, then flies directly toward Bastian and, as he approaches, grabs his face and unleashes a point-blank explosion, trying to end everything at once. When the dust settles, Iki is the only one standing and assumes he has won. Although many demons have died at Bastian's hands, but the fight isn't over, and suddenly Bastian's head rolls in front of Iki. At the same time, the headless body sneaks up behind him, ready to attack. Several consecutive explosions shake the stadium's foundations, but Iki manages to avoid an impact by leaping back and creating distance. Even so, Bastian laughs, saying all of this is useless and that Iki cannot win. As leader of the 7th Immortal Brigade, Iki should know better than anyone that undead don't die so easily. All the soldiers he destroyed earlier quickly regenerate and return to the fight. Bastian, like his subordinates, is undead, meaning nothing Iki does will be enough to guarantee victory. They will always return, and the undead soldiers begin attacking with explosive skull strikes, though they continue to have terrible aim. It's like playing Valorant, but even without hitting, they draw Iki's attention, giving room for another surprise attack. While Iki is distracted, one of the soldiers approaches from behind, trying to take him down, but Iki notices and freezes the soldier's arm, crushing him to pieces. Immediately after, he activates his temporal magic, slowing time around all enemy. With the battlefield paused, Iki advances calmly, knocking them down one by one with his staff. However, not even the power of Zawardo is enough to contain Bastian's army, and they keep getting up. The army is practically infinite, regenerating endlessly. No matter how much Iki fights, his mana is finite, and eventually he will become exhausted, becoming easy prey for the relentless attacks of the undead. Bastian says it's a shame that Iki has to die this way, because if he had agreed to join him, he could have made use of his talents. At that moment, a distant archer fires an explosive arrow directly at Iki's back. But Iki, remembering the previous attack, is alert this time, and as soon as the arrow hits, he creates a magical shield just in time. The explosion is massive, cracking the shield and sending debris across the arena. But Iki survived. Bastian is shocked to see him still alive after such a devastating blow. But in a way, it makes sense after all. Iki is the commander of the 7th Immortal Brigade, and would not have reached such a position without being extremely strong. Even so, Bastian says it's useless to resist. No matter how hard Iki tries, the outcome will always be the same. He will die at the hands of the Immortal Army. Iki realizes that Bastian is partly right, and all of his offensive spells have consumed a lot of mana, and if this continues, he won't have the strength to finish the fight. So he quickly thinks of a new approach, and he knows that the undead are reanimated corpses, and that dark magic won't work on them. After all, they already belong to darkness. But reflecting on this, an idea occurs to him. A plan capable of defeating the cursed corpses once and for all. Thus, as the undead run toward him, Iki channels a sacred power, and with a shout, he unleashes his purification magic. Light explodes across the arena, consuming the undead and reducing them to dust. Bastian is horrified to see his entire army disintegrated by Iki's sacred magic, but he still doesn't give up and shouts to his archer, ordering him to fire again. However, before the archer can shoot, his arm is cut in half by a blade. It's Sefero appearing before him. She apologizes for taking so long, but says she has finally arrived and brought reinforcements. On the ground, the rest of the Immortal Brigade appears, confronting Bastian's army. Iki's soldiers join the battle and quickly destroy the remaining undead. Meanwhile, in the skies, Sefero flies to Iki, informing him that the others are handling the situation out there. But as soon as Bastian notices her presence, he begins concentrating his power to attack her. Before he can react, a cold, authoritative voice echoes behind him, saying that Iki is his opponent, and he must ignore Sefero. Bastian turns, and to his horror, he sees Dariokutin in person. She has every right to annihilate him immediately, and probably should do so. But surprisingly, Dariokutin declares that she will give him one last chance to survive. If he wants to live, he will have to defeat Ikki in a deadly duel. This is actually the second chance she grants Bastien, even though she knew he was a traitor from the beginning. But as the supreme ruler, Ikki has no choice but to accept the challenge and face Bastien alone. The two launch at each other, and when Bastien attacks with his sword, Ikki blocks it with his shield magic. But Bastien feels insulted that Ikki actually believes he can win, so he puts everything into his sword and attacks Ikki's shield again, this time causing a crack in Ikki's defenses. Bastien tells Ikki that he is weak compared to him, so there is no doubt in his mind that Ikki will lose this duel. He continues attacking while telling Ikki that his time is up, and even when Ikki tries to leap back to create some distance, Bastien wastes no time, using his head to fire a dark laser at Ikki. But when Ikki notices this, he counters Bastien with his own spell, using white magic. The white magic dominates Bastien, and upon contact, causes Bastien's arm to decompose. Sephiroth had no idea that Ikki could use white magic, and she wonders when and where Ikki could have learned it. But after seeing the Demon King's indifferent expression, it becomes clear that Daryokuten already knew Ikki possessed such magic. Bastien refuses to give up and attacks Ikki once more. But all the while, Ikki is having a flashback to his youth, when he was still studying magic with Romberg. At that time, he seemed strangely interested in a wilted flower, but since it was time for his daily magic lessons, he set it aside for the moment and went to study with Romberg. Ikki ended up learning many interesting spells, but when the lessons ended, he became curious about where he could find magic that could bring a wilted flower back to life. Romberg immediately said that white magic could do that, so Ikki asked to learn it next. However, Romberg reminded Ikki that he should be pretending to be a demon, and that white magic is almost impossible for demons to learn. This is because it draws power from a compassionate heart, and demons are born to hate, so naturally, they have no affinity with it. That said, Ikki is human, so he should be able to learn it. But Romberg made it clear that white magic is the most terrible weapon to use against demons. So even if Ikki wants to learn it, he must be careful when using it. Ikki agreed to be cautious, and Romberg taught him. Back in the present, Ikki tells Bastien that his ambition to become Demon King is excessive for someone like him. He has no qualms about sacrificing his men, and was willing to betray his master just to gain power. While this is the normal way a demon acts, Ikki will not tolerate such atrocities. Demon or not, a ruler who oppresses his subjects is wrong, and Bastien orders Ikki to shut up, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Ikki tells him to be quiet, saying that these will be his last moments of life. Bastien tries to attack him again, so Ikki charges his white magic, and with a quick motion, he cuts Bastien's stomach and kills him for good. With Bastien finally defeated, Sephiroth approaches Ikki and says that she's glad everything worked out in the end. Ikki realizes that Sephiroth must have been planning something with Bastien, and that's why she asked Ikki to handle the duel, while she prepared reinforcements for the inevitable coup attempt. Sephiroth sees no problem with this, since everyone survived in the end, except for a few hundred civilian demons, but they weren't important anyway. However, Daryokuten approaches them and says that there's a major problem to resolve, since now Bastien is dead, so the Third Corps has no leader, and she is giving the position to Ikki. Before he has a chance to say anything, she teleports him away. After that, all of Ikki's team approaches to congratulate him on the victory, but Sephiroth seems upset about something. A little later, Sephiroth goes to see Daryokuten in her castle, and angrily says that Ikki serves under her command, so she should be the one to decide where he goes. And Daryokuten is surprised that Sephiroth is so upset about this, since she thought she would be happy about Ikki's promotion. But in any case, Sephiroth serves under Daryokuten's command, so she has no right to assign Ikki any position she wants, although she thinks it's better to listen to what he has to say, since he's there anyway. Ikki appears, and Daryokuten assumes he must have decided whether to accept the promotion. Ikki begins by saying that the people in his city are finally getting used to their new lives. At first, his men didn't like living with humans, but over time they learned to adapt to the new lifestyle. Just like the humans, they live in relative peace and help each other without prejudice. And this is a big step toward Ikki's ultimate goal. He explains that when he joined the Demon King's army, he hoped to create a world where humans and demons could coexist peacefully, and his goal hasn't changed. He removes his mask as a sign of sincerity and apologizes to Daryokuten, since he will have to decline the promotion. He still has much to learn from Sephiroth, but he promises to make Avelias his first city, where humans and demons coexist. When Ikki returns to Avelias, he takes a moment to contemplate everything he has. Sadi comes to see him and asks if something is bothering him. him, since he has barely spent any time inside his house since the duel ended. But Ikki says he just wanted to check the quality of the soil. He has been thinking about changing the agricultural system so they can cultivate year-round. Sadi is excited, because this means she can take shifts whenever she wants. But while Ikki is thinking about planting, the human army gradually advances, reducing the forces of the demon army as the war progresses. Ikki remains oblivious to this, so he continues with his agricultural plan, and uses magic to make it rain on the fields. Sadi asks Ikki what he intends to do, and he begins to explain. Currently, the way they use the valley farmlands is by planting wheat for their food. After that, they let the land rest and later plant grass to feed their livestock. However, this means they have to leave the land unused for a large part of the year. So, Ikki thought of a better way to do things. From now on, they will rotate crops between wheat and clover, planted alongside turnips. The crop rotation will allow the soil to maintain its fertility without a rest period. This means that no one in Ailas will have to go hungry again. Next, Ikki returns to his office, where Sadi brings him tea. She also congratulates Ikki, as she heard that Safra promoted him to vice commander, since a certain goblin vice commander was killed. At that moment, Jyrn runs into the room with terrible news to report. This news is about the King's Alliance, which is slowly invading the territory of the demon army. In fact, they have already completely exterminated the Second Corps on their way here. And this is an incredible feat of power, because the Second Corps is composed entirely of skilled fighters. Therefore, the fact that they were so completely exterminated means the Alliance is a force to be reckoned with. Ikki is a little surprised by the King's Alliance, since it's having such a pronounced effect on the war. But Sage doesn't know that it's the King's Alliance, so Ikki explains to her that it is one of the old human treaties, which states that when the Demon Lord's army becomes too powerful for a single nation to handle, the humans will put aside their differences and collectively decide to attack the demon army. Since it's an ancient treaty, Jyrn asks if it has happened before. From what Ikki knows, the treaty has been invoked 3 times in the past, and each time it was used, it led to the defeat of the Demon Lord's army at that time. This is a very concerning statistic, so Jyrn asks Ikki if they will be okay. But Ikki responds that no, they are practically doomed. With the recent advance of the Alliance, Ailas will certainly be the next target. Not long ago, Ikki helped capture Sonnen, a heavily fortified, strategic city. So the Alliance's goal is probably to try to reclaim it, and to do so they will first have to attack the front lines here in Ailas. Demons are generally stronger than humans in individual fights, but they will have to deal with large groups of humans in coordinated attacks. If Ailas falls into human hands, they will almost certainly move on to capture Sonnen with their numbers. It's likely that Sonnen will also be lost, and from there, the demon army would be forced to retreat to the Demon Lord's castle, putting them in a very difficult situation. And Ikki does not want that to happen, as it would ruin his dream. So he needs a plan to overcome the overwhelming numbers of the Alliance, which will involve many weapons. Unfortunately, they don't have that many weapons, and their attempts to manufacture more weapons didn't go as well as they had hoped. They try to use alchemy to recreate weapons, and at first glance, it seems successful. But when actually used, the quality of the weapons is much worse than expected, as the replicas break after firing a single shot. Alchemy has its limits, and the level of precision required to manufacture a weapon is far beyond what any alchemist could achieve, since these replicas are very fragile and lack the power of the real weapon. Saphira asks if it's really necessary to use weapons, since she's certain she could just use a few meteors to destroy the Alliance. However, Ikki is completely against the idea, as he is trying to defend Ailas, not turn it into a pile of ashes. To fight the Alliance with minimal collateral damage, they need weapons that anyone can use. But the only remaining option to mass-produce the weapons is to manufacture all the metal parts individually and assemble them by hand. This is certainly possible, but none of them are skilled enough to do something like that. It might be possible if they could convince some dwarves to do the work, but the dwarves have already lost the war against the humans, so they all scattered into the forest. This will make it very difficult to get help from them with the weapons, especially since they need many dwarves to manufacture all the parts. Gathering them all would be very difficult. But Ikki has a plan for that, which involves rescuing the Dwarf King, who was imprisoned by the humans. Years ago, the humans attacked the dwarf village and set it on fire, all in an attempt to force the dwarves to make weapons for them. With the entire village in flames, the human general became angry, because the dwarf king refused to obey their orders, so they sent a message, went there, and burned everything. The dwarf king still refused to comply with the humans' demands, since he did not want them to use his technology to wage wars. But because the dwarf king still wouldn't agree to do as they said, the human general had to send another message. He threw a sword dangerously close to the dwarf king's general's groin. However, before they could cut off his Santa Claus area, the general threatened to kill his son if he didn't cooperate. The dwarf king was willing to lose many things, but his son was precious to him, more than anything else, so he gave in and agreed to make his people work for the Smurf kingdom. After that, he was locked in the kingdom's prison, and had no idea what his son or his people were going through at that moment. At that instant, he hears a commotion outside his cell, so he gets up to see what it is. To his surprise, he finds all the guards knocked out on the ground. Lilith then appears in front of him, and is happy to have finally found the correct cell. She then unlocks the door and tells the dwarf king to follow her. The dwarf king doesn't understand why a demon would save him, but Lilith isn't in the mood to answer questions, so she uses her magic to render the dwarf king unconscious. Jyrn yells at her for doing that, since they were supposed to be rescuing him, but she doesn't care and lets Jyrn carry the dwarf king alone. As they walk through the corridors, Jyrn checks to make sure there are no guards nearby, but Lilith says she's getting bored. She wants a bit of action, as she's tired of all this stealth. But Jyrn reminds her that he said they needed to make sure they weren't seen, while carrying the dwarf king to avoid fights if possible. In response to Jyrn's sensible argument, Lilith simply looks him in the eyes and calls him ugly. All their arguing catches the attention of some guards, so Lilith takes the opportunity to knock them out just for fun. Jyrn scolds her for going against Ikki's orders and starting a fight. But soon a single guard comes charging at Jyrn. Jyrn knocks him out with a punch, and Lilith begins mocking him for getting into a fight as well. The two leave the dungeon, but for some reason, there are dozens of soldiers sitting outside, so they are immediately discovered and now have to face the soldier. Jyrn asks Lilith to handle it, so she flies through the air and starts using her powers to suck up all the soldiers, but only enough to render them unconscious. Since Ikki doesn't like unnecessary deaths, Ikki had been nearby the entire time to monitor how the two would handle the mission. He's quite disappointed that they drew so much attention, and Jyrn doesn't understand why there are still so many soldiers left in Smo, since the Alliance should have recruited most of them, and they can't knock out anyone else because Lilith is already full while running. Pillars of rock rise behind them to block the guard's path, and Ikki appears. He says the two did a good job, even though they almost ruined the mission. Jyrn reports that they successfully captured the Dwarf King, but Ikki reminds him that the person they're holding is a king, so he must be treated with more respect. A few hours later, the Dwarf King wakes up in Ikki's castle and still wants to know why the demons decided to rescue him. But Ikki does not answer immediately. Instead, he shows a weapon to the Dwarf King, asking if he would be able to recreate it. The Dwarf King has never seen a weapon like this before and recognizes that it is quite complicated, but he believes he could recreate it in a few hours if he tried. However, he has no reason to try, since he refuses to build weapons for war. They are only using him, just as the humans did, so he says they can do whatever they want with him, but he will not help them cause death and destruction. Ikki understands why the king feels this way, but assures him that his intentions are by no means sinister. He wants the weapons to promote his ultimate goal, which is peace between humans and demons. And to prove it, he asks the Dwarf King to follow him outside. He leaves Ikki's castle, and the Dwarf King is shocked to see the bustling streets, full of humans and demons with no fights in sight. Ikki reiterates that the only thing he wishes for is to establish peace between humans and demons, and for that, he needs the Dwarf King's help. The Dwarf King finds what Ikki is doing quite interesting, but still refuses to help because the humans used his people and destroyed his nation. So he has no interest in doing anything that would bring peace to humanity. If that's the case, Ikki offers to help the Dwarf King rebuild his destroyed kingdom if he helps. The Dwarf King is offended by the idea and tells Ikki that rebuilding a nation is not as easy as he thinks. He lost his family when his nation was destroyed by the humans, so how could Ikki claim to be capable of rebuilding it? Ikki understands the king's skepticism, but there is one thing he wants to show the Dwarf King, so he takes him to the workshop. The Dwarf King has a look of disbelief on his face. The workshop is full of dwarves he had lost contact with, even his son. They are all very happy to have their king Gunther back. They tell the king that they were suddenly abducted by demons. So at first, they thought they were being sacrificed for something, but the demons provided them food and a place to stay. And Ikki even promised to rescue the king, which earned their support. After seeing how well Ikki has treated his people, the king believes he can trust him, so he agrees to offer his full support to help Ikki achieve his goal of peace. After the agreement is finalized, Ikki returns to his office. While Sadi is busy cleaning, he removes his mask and she offers to make tea for him, but Ikki tells her she has been working too much lately, so she can take a break and relax. Sadi thanks him for the offer, but says she prefers to have something to do. And if that's the case, Ikki tells her she can read some books if she wants. Once again, Sadi thanks him for the offer, but she never learned to read, so she wouldn't get much use out of the books. Since she never learned to read, Ikki offers to teach her at the next opportunity he has. Sadi is very happy to hear this, and at that moment, Lilith bursts into the room to inform Ikki that the remaining dwarves have been found, so Ikki quickly puts his mask back up and tells her she did a good job. However, Lilith isn't very happy, as she clearly notices that Ikki and Sadi were having a special moment and becomes jealous. Sadi and Lilith start arguing about Ikki again, and out of nowhere, Jyrn comes running in with more terrible news. Meanwhile, General Dismuth has just received word that the Dwarf King was taken from prison by the demons, but he isn't too worried, since he doesn't believe the elderly dwarf could make much difference in the outcome of the war. He then receives a report from his scout saying that Valias currently has about 500 soldiers. This news gives the general great confidence, as he greatly outnumbers the enemy forces. He then orders his army of 12,000 soldiers to prepare to march. The guy is almost reenacting the movie 300 here. Sometime later, we see the dwarf at the top of a cliff, while Jyrn struggles to reach the top. Ikki could have easily helped with levitation magic, but he decides not to because he really needs the exercise. When he finally reaches the top, he is exhausted and asks how much further it is to their destination. But fortunately, it seems they've already arrived. The dwarf tells him not to worry because the objective is very close. In fact, it's already visible. He then leads Ikki and Jyrn to a cave full of natural nitrate, perfect for making gunpowder. Back in the city, the dwarves are working hard to create the weapons needed for Ikki's army, and they have already made several. To test them, Jyrn calls some of the goblins and instructs them to shoot at targets. When they do, the wood is full of holes, and Jyrn is satisfied with the results. He orders the goblins to continue practicing with the weapons, while the troops gather in the city. The troop leaders are in a meeting with Ikki and Saphira to discuss their war plans. One of them asks Ikki how he managed to rebuild the city walls so quickly, when it should have taken at least twice as long. Ikki explains that he made the humans work alongside the demons to accelerate the reconstruction process. He even paid the humans a decent wage for it, as this would motivate them more than if they had been forced to work. At that moment, the leader of the gargoyles enters through the window, complaining that the room is so small he couldn't use the door. But there's not much to be done, since it was built for humans and not for 3-meter-tall demons. It's been a while since he last saw Ikki, so he greets him with his new title of Vice Commander, although Ikki doesn't feel it necessary to go through all the formalities. With everyone present, Saphira begins the meeting and tells everyone that from now on, she is giving Ikki full authority over all war procedures. Thus, all troop leaders are now required to obey all of his commands, since he is their direct superior. None of them have any complaints about this order, as they all have great respect for Ikki after what he did to Bastian during the duel. They all tell Ikki they will do everything he commands, but beyond that, they really need to start thinking about a strategy, since he only has 2,000 soldiers, while the enemy has about 12,000. Captain Lobo tells everyone that the troops should be able to easily win a 6-to-1 battle, but Ikki reminds him that even if he believes his wolf army can handle it, there are still many demons in the army who wouldn't be able to do so. In that case, the ogres suggest launching a night attack to surprise the enemy. However, Ikki rejects this idea, knowing that the enemy army has mages among its ranks. Therefore, if they attempted a night attack, a single detection spell could ruin everything. Instead, he wants to fight them on their own term, and for that, he states that he will allow the human army to attack them here. The enemy army must be very confident due to its large size, so Ikki intends to take that confidence away and see them crumble. This way, he can end the battle as quickly as possible and with minimal casualties. After the meeting ends, Sadi is busy cleaning up the mess from the hole in the roof, and Jyrn is helping as well. Meanwhile, Ikki is examining the map, and Sadi comments to him that the city has become very lively recently. To his surprise, she is so calm, despite the fact that they will be going to war in just a few hours. But Sadi tells him she isn't afraid, because she knows that everyone here will do their best to defend Valias. And although she cannot take part in the fighting, she can still help by preparing food for the soldier. Even so, she has some concerns about what to do to prepare the meals, since she has to make a large amount of food for a big group of soldiers, and the only thing she knows how to cook on a large scale is soup. She asks Ikki if he has any suggestions for her. So Ikki stands up and begins to look through his collection of books, but Sadi says there's no need to go so far just to give her an answer. Ikki tells her that this is important, because what the soldiers eat can directly affect their morale, so he needs to do everything possible to ensure his men have the best meals possible. He's glad there's no shortage at the moment, since that would have been catastrophic for the army's strength. As he flips through a cookbook and asks Sadi if they have rice, and she confirms, He suggests she try making something like fried rice. After learning the recipe, Sadi immediately heads to the kitchen to start cooking. Despite having only heard of the recipe a few minutes ago, her cooking skills are so good that she could easily earn Uncle Roger's approval. When she finishes, she serves some rice to Ikki, and the two are happy with the result. Fried rice doesn't take long to prepare and can be made in large quantity. Yet the flavor is excellent, so it will definitely help boost the soldiers' morale once they taste it. For now, they prepare to eat fried rice together. But before they can take the first bite, they are interrupted by Jiren, who is jealous that they are eating such delicious food without inviting him to join. Ikki asks Jiren if he wants a plate of rice as well, and he enthusiastically agrees, so Sadi brings him a plate too. However, before he can start eating, they are interrupted again when Lilith enters. She becomes jealous because the others are eating with Ikki without her, so she also wants to join them. Both she and Jiren are impressed with the wonderful taste of the rice, especially Lilith, who eagerly asks Sadi to serve more. But Sadi puts too much food on the plate, so Lilith accuses Sadi of trying to make her gain weight. They start glaring at each other, and Ikki just wishes they could share the meal without fighting, at least once. After all that, Ikki reviews everything he has done in preparation for the Alliance invasion. He repaired the city walls, all of them, by the way, and gathered a large army to fight, equipping everyone with weapons to ensure victory. So his next step is to employ his strategy. At the same time, an ogre on watch notices the Alliance army approaching. He sounds the alarm and tells everyone it's time to prepare for war. Jiren comes running to inform Ikki that it's time for the army to launch the initial attack. Ikki then goes out and faces the Alliance with his troops. He tells them that if the Alliance manages to get past them, they will continue attacking Sornen, and that would be devastating for the demon army. So he says they must protect Valias at all costs, and everyone agrees and begins to cheer. But at the same time, the human army commander says he's disappointed. Since the demons are far fewer in number than he had expected, he went to the trouble of hiring the best soldiers from all over the country. But in the end, it seems he worried for nothing and fears that his army might be overkill. He no longer considers this a war, but an extermination. So he orders his men to attack and ensure victory against these filthy monsters. But as the human army advances, they begin using heavy artillery, and Ikki launches a barrier to defend the castle from all incoming projectiles. However, the human commander is undeterred and orders his troops to fire another barrage. They keep doing this in hopes of overwhelming Ikki's barrier, but Ikki shows no signs of fatigue, so his soldiers begin cheering once again. Ikki expected them to start an attack like this, but he is trying to anticipate what their next move will be. The human commander sees the barrier blocking all his attacks, but it seems he has a plan in mind. So he orders his soldiers to fire yet another volley. Lilith mocks the human army for repeatedly firing at Ikki's barrier, even if it's pointless. But this time, it seems the humans have taken Ikki's barrier into account, since they brought their mages and disrupted the barrier. This caused the projectiles to hit their target, and with the barrier down, the human commander orders his first squad of soldiers to launch the attack. However, as the soldiers advance toward the wall, they are stopped in their tracks when they see a titan emerge behind the walls, throwing stones at them. The soldiers watch some of their comrades get hit by stones, and instead of attacking the titan, Commander Erwin is not there to motivate them, so they start thinking about fleeing. But Ikki's other soldiers begin shooting arrows at it, and everyone uses their shields to defend themselves, realizing that they can also shoot the giant. Then, before it can throw another stone at them, they shoot multiple arrows at its chest and bring it down. They continue shooting arrows at the people on the wall, forcing the others to turn and run for cover. Ikki raises another barrier to stop the arrows. But the soldiers are already too close, so they start anchoring ladders to the wall. They begin to climb, but obviously, Ikki's soldiers won't just let them reach the top, so they start shooting arrows and throwing stones in an attempt to stop the humans. However, the humans have a numerical advantage, so if they keep climbing, eventually at least one of them will reach the top. But it won't be any of these guys. As the battle continues, the human deputy commander comments that the demons are much tougher than he imagined, but if they keep attacking, sooner or later, they should be able to overcome the demons. However, as he watches his men die in battle, the only thing the commander can think about is what he will have for dinner tonight. He wants to finish this as quickly as possible so he can relax. So he decides to fire another catapult at the wall. Even though many of his men are on the front line, he doesn't care and goes ahead with it. The deputy commander even tries to mention that something like this would put his men's lives in danger. But the commander doesn't hesitate at all and continues regardless. He then orders the catapults to be fired, and Ikki sees the projectiles approaching. He even tries to put up a barrier, but it's destroyed once again. So he tells everyone to brace for impact. Everyone runs for cover as the projectile hits the wall. The collision causes extensive damage to the structure of the wall and many casualties among those inside, both on the demon's side and the human side. Jiren miraculously manages to survive, and Lilith is absolutely furious. that the human commander is willing to kill his own men just to break through the wall. Ikki is both sad and angry at the commander's total disregard for human life. The commander smiles arrogantly, showing he's having a lot of fun. Without a second thought or any self-reflection, he orders the second squad of soldiers to attack through the hole in the wall. Ikki's soldiers go out to intercept them, but the battle is highly unfavorable for them at this point. The human army is advancing steadily and significantly, getting closer to infiltrating the city walls. Meanwhile, the human commander is sipping a cup of tea and wondering why the fight isn't over yet. To speed things up, he orders his deputy to send the third unit of soldiers. The battle is progressing much faster than Ikki had initially anticipated, but he still believes his plan should hold against the humans' relentless assault. With the hole in the wall, Lilith is doing her best to hold back the humans and prevent them from entering. She manages to repel them for now, but there are too many humans, so she isn't sure how long she can maintain it. Jyrn and the other trained demons would like to provide support with weapons, but since the humans are so close to their allies, they might hit their friends if they shoot now. They are trapped, as there's nothing they can safely do to help. But that's when the werewolf general takes action. He and his team advance and start exterminating the humans, one by one. With their help, they have a much better chance of keeping the humans at bay. But the humans do not give up. Instead, they shout for all their fellow soldiers to attack only in groups of 3, so they can overpower the demons. However, before the humans could use that so-called power of friendship, the demons start using an even stronger power, the power of weapons. Since now they had a very clear target, the humans try to use their shields to defend themselves, but the bullets pierce them. That was the first volley of shots, as Jyrn orders the second group of armed demons to begin firing. After seeing the devastation the weapons can cause, the rest of the humans begin to run to save their lives. So everyone starts to retreat, and in the midst of the flight, the wolf general captures a human and is about to cut his face. But before he does, a horn is sounded, signaling all the demons to stop fighting. The wolf general is disappointed, but rules are rules. So he stops fighting and releases the human soldier so he can return to his city. Fiorentina is atop the walls, watching the humans as they retreat. And she's thinking about a strategy that was presented to her earlier. He said he wanted to end the war quickly, with minimal casualties, and the generals agreed with him. But something like that is easier said than done. So they ask Ikki how he intends to do it. Ikki says he wants everyone to fight with all their strength for as long as they can. He asks the wolf general how long he can hold out if he fights with everything he has. And the wolf general says he can keep fighting for about an hour, but his soldiers can't endure as long as he can. So Ikki sets a time limit of 10 minutes. He tells the wolf general that he wants him and his soldiers to fight with all their might for 10 minutes. And after that they must withdraw from the battlefield, no matter what happens. That part of the plan is complete. So moments later the ogres rush out of the castle gates in a frenzy of rage. Seeing the brutality of the ogres, even more humans begin to fear for their lives and make a hasty retreat. And during the strategic meeting, the wolf general initially felt insulted when Ikki told him he would have to pull back in battle. So he accuses Ikki of not trusting him. However, it's not that Ikki doesn't trust him, he simply has a plan in mind. But the other soldier understood the plan much faster. So he explains to the wolf general that Ikki wants them to attack in shifts. The longer they fight on the battlefield, the more fatigue they will suffer. Therefore, if they attack in turns, they will not only be able to confuse and wear down the enemy, but also remain in good condition for a long time. He ends up liking the plan a lot. But fighting in shifts alone won't be enough to overcome the large number of human soldiers, and that's why Ikki has another phase to his plan. He intends to use the marksman Jyrn and Fiorentina's alchemy to lure the humans into a position where they have no choice but to attack at a single point. So he asks Fiorentina if she is ready for the task. She says she will carry out his orders even if she must sacrifice her life to do so. But Ikki asks her not to. He doesn't want anyone to intentionally sacrifice their life for any reason. He reminds everyone that his goal is to minimize casualties among his soldiers, so there's no reason for anyone to let themselves die. On the human side, they have just loaded their catapult and are about to launch a devastating salvo of stones. But before they could fire, they are hit by another volley of stones coming from above. That was the work of the demon army's aerial unit. They mock the humans for building such fragile machines as they do this. This was clearly part of Ikki's brilliant strategy, since he said the aerial unit's task was to fly high above the battlefield and destroy the humans' siege engines. Ikki also had the freedom to scout the enemy forces, and from what he gathered, he knows the human army has more than 12,000, and that their leader is a man of noble birth who is a total coward and prioritizes his own safety and well-being above all else. Fiorentina was beginning to understand where Ikki wanted to go with this, so Ikki explains that if their efforts cause a shift in the tide of battle, the enemy general will certainly react, and due to his cowardly nature and reaction, he will almost certainly flee. From there, all they need to do is find him and capture him. but the wolf isn't sure things will work out so conveniently. Because they need to capture him, wouldn't it be much easier to just kill him on the spot? But Ikki says he has a plan for the enemy commander, so the wolf needn't worry about that. He only wants all his generals here to perform their roles as best they can and asks that none of them make selfish decisions. The general and the others agree to Ikki's terms, but to clarify, all Ikki wants them to do is crush the enemies they find in front of them. Therefore, although it seems overly simple, they choose to trust Ikki's plan. Back in the present, the aerial unit continues destroying the humans' siege equipment, and so far Gyron and Fiorentina are happy that things are going well according to Ikki's plan. Fiorentina can't help but worry about Saphira. Will she be able to complete her task in this war all alone? Back at the strategic meeting, Fiorentina asks Ikki what Saphira would be doing while the war is happening. Ikki tells her that he had already asked Saphira to do something very important. It could even be said that she has the most important task of everyone involved in the war, but Saphira still finds it very annoying to be stuck doing it instead of participating in the war itself. She cursed Ikki for asking her to stay behind and pursue the enemy forces, as it's an incredibly boring task for her. But not everything is bad, because she just spotted a very handsome human, so maybe she can have a little fun after all. With the ogres on the front line and the marksmen slowly reducing the number of human soldiers who managed to enter the city, things don't look so good for the human troops. They had been confident at first because they knew they had a numerical advantage, but even with that advantage, they are still struggling to advance. One of the human soldiers goes to inform the general that they have breached the castle walls, but the enemy counterattacked with an incredibly powerful strike, so the squads that infiltrated the wall were immediately wiped out. The general becomes furious, while the vice commander thinks they should probably retreat completely for now and regroup. The general demands that the troops launch a full-scale offensive. The vice commander thinks doing that now would be very risky, but the general simply doesn't care. If they can't win a 5-to-1 fight, then they'll make it 10-to-1. And if that doesn't work, he's willing to raise the number to 20 soldiers per demon. The vice commander tells him that what he's planning is extremely risky, but the general is very stubborn and refuses to listen to any opinions on the matter. However, contrary to the vice commander's expectations, the general says he will join the soldiers to lead the next attack, in order to boost their morale. By this point, Fiorentina is shocked that the humans are still choosing to attack, even after all the losses they suffered in the battle. Gyron says that everything will work out in the end, as it seems that Ikki's final plan is finally ready. So, as the humans advance toward the city, they are shocked when the group begins to split, and several humans fall to their inevitable deaths. The humans ask if this could be one of the demons' magical attacks, so they order their mages to cancel it. But unfortunately for them, the mage unit has already been captured. Gyron and Fiorentina are surprised, as they had no idea when Ikki managed to do this, but it's not over yet because Ikki still has one more thing to do. The general's forces are terrified by all the chaos around them, so he is thrown out and left on the ground where Ikki eventually finds him. Ikki asks if he is the commander of the human army, and now that he has the right person, he complains about how his men ended up dying while trying to locate him, so he will have to take responsibility for that. Ikki warns the general that they could simply kill him, and if they do, his men will retreat since none of them actually want to be there. However, if the general agrees to order the retreat now, Ikki promises not to kill him. The general stands and speaks directly to Ikki, saying he must be bluffing. They can't kill him because they need him to give the order to retreat, but he is completely wrong. As soon as he refuses to retreat peacefully as Ikki intended, Riaya appears behind him and slashes the general's chest. He has great resentment toward him and wants to end him immediately, but Ikki uses some chain magic to hold him back. The general now realizes that Ikki was not bluffing when he said the general would be killed if he didn't retreat, so he immediately orders all his men to fall back. All the human soldiers are confused as to why the general did this suddenly, but they do not complain, since it means they no longer have to sacrifice their lives. While Ikki and Riaya watch them leave, Riaya doesn't mention that they will almost certainly return to attack again someday. Although he is grateful to Ikki, he asks whether Ikki will later regret letting the general live. Ikki cannot say for certain that he will regret it later, but he doesn't mind if the general decides to attack again, because next time his army will be much stronger than it is now. But for ours, it's a victory for Valias, so they will celebrate as much as possible. Gyron runs up to Ikki, but Ikki doesn't like being hugged so tightly. Lilith gets jealous because she's supposed to be the only one hugging Ikki. As she and Gyron argue over who deserves to be closer to Ikki, Sadi comes running because she doesn't want to be left out either. While Ikki is being suffocated to death by affection, The troop leaders talk about how much they believe in him. He is certainly capable enough to be their superior, and they trust him completely, so they couldn't ask for a better leader. While all this is happening on the front lines, Safra is on patrol with the rear reinforcements, but their commander ordered everyone to retreat because he knew they had no chance of defeating her. He seems as interested in Safra as she is in him, so they face off. But before anything can happen, the retreat is declared. He then tells Safra that they can continue this another time. Safra takes a moment to reflect on how proud she is that Ikki won the war so easily. At this pace, it won't be long before he's promoted to even higher ranks within the demon army. But Safra will let the Demon King decide how far Ikki will go. Safra congratulates Ikki for successfully defending the city against the invasion, but Ikki refuses to accept all the praise, saying the victory was thanks to everyone's hard work. The kid is too humble. Anyway, when Ikki gets a 20-minute break, Safra tells him she will assign his next crucial task. She wants him to go to Zenobia and explains that the humans will likely launch a full-scale attack in the near future, so they need to prepare for this possibility. The reason for her assumption is the fact that they just defeated the Alliance, and their victory will certainly provoke a stronger response from the humans. The problem the demon army faces now is a lack of supplies, and although Ikki's cultivation methods have certainly increased the number of crops that can be harvested there, it's still not enough to feed the entire army. Valia's has been short on food since the war intensified, so she wants Ikki to negotiate a trade deal with the Federation. She's always given him impossible tasks, but this time he has a way out, mentioning that humans would never agree to negotiate directly with demons. Safra agrees with him, but reminds him that he is human, so this won't be a problem for him. Ikki has nothing to say about it, so now he has no choice but to make the trip, and he returns to his office to prepare. As soon as the news of his trip reaches Gyron and Lilith, they run to his office to ask if he's really going to Zenobia. Ikki confirms that he is and says he will be away for a while, so Gyron offers to go with him and act as his bodyguard. But Lilith interrupts him and tells Ikki that he should take her, as she would be a much better travel companion. They start arguing over who will go with Ikki, but Ikki interrupts both of them and says he wants both of them to stay in Valia's. Neither of them likes the idea, but Ikki explains that they have more important tasks to handle, so he really needs them there. He says that Valia's has become popular recently, so they've been receiving many new refugees and such. He wants Lilith to handle any problems that arise, while Gyron will be responsible for city administration. A few hours later, Ikki is in the forest with Sadi, Camille from Zenobia. Sadi is very happy to spend some time alone with Ikki, but she also feels a little bad for Gyron and Lilith, knowing they wanted to come just as much as she did, and who didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. Moreover, Sadi has never been to Zenobia, so she asks what kind of country it is. However, Ikki corrects her, saying that Zenobia is not really a country. In fact, it is a commercial city in the south, serving as the headquarters of the Federation of Leaders. As a commercial city, Zenobia has an abundance of crops unique to the south, as well as a wide variety of herbs and spices. Sadi is pleased because that means they can buy lots of fruits and vegetables from Zenobia. Although she isn't wrong, Ikki tells her it goes a bit beyond that. Zenobia has everything, and by everything, Ikki really means everything, including the acquisition of supplements that will determine the fate of the demon army. Sadi asks if it's really possible for humans and demons to make a deal, and honestly, Ikki doesn't think it's likely. But that's why he brought Sadi to show that humans and demons can coexist. As Ikki rides, a commotion arises from the front, and it seems a group of bandits is attacking the carriage. The guards aren't very effective against the bandit leader, since he is as strong as 2.5 men, or at least as heavy as them. Because of that, he manages to knock down everyone in his path. After eliminating the guards at the door, he opens the carriage and takes a look at the young woman inside. He's already imagining all the fun he could have with her, but before he can do anything disgusting, he gets punched off screen, and several of his men are tied up. Ikki approaches the carriage and tells the girl that he came to rescue her, but after taking a good look at her, he realizes that she looks a lot like Sadi. It's a strange coincidence, but he doesn't have much time to think about it, as more bandits suddenly appear, so he uses his magic to immobilize the rest of them with roots. After doing that, he goes to the injured guards and uses healing magic to help them recover. The captain of the guard thanks Ikki for his help and asks if there's anything they can do to repay his kindness, but Ikki doesn't want anything in return. And just as he's about to leave, the girl from the carriage approaches him and introduces herself as Yuria, the daughter of Zenobia's leader. She offers to accompany Ikki to Zenobia, and as they travel, she thanks him again for saving her. She's truly impressed by the level of magic Ikki is capable of. As he easily captures the red bird, Ikki introduces himself as a mage from Smooth, and to keep his identity a secret, he presents Sadi as his servant. Ikki asks Yuria why she's so far from Zenobia, and she explains that she had an arranged marriage with a very powerful man, but it didn't work out well between them. Iki is surprised that any man would refuse to marry a girl as beautiful as Yuria, but Yuria explains that she actually refused the engagement herself, and now that she has met Iki, she's very happy she did. After arriving in the city, they are taken to the office of Zenobia's leader, and she stands to introduce herself to the man who saved her daughter. The leader is named Utria, but she has a lot of work to do, so she continues working while talking. Iki feels incredibly lucky to have found exactly the daughter of the leader, as she's the person he hoped to meet. But there are still many negotiations to be made. Utria asks Yuria to leave the office for a moment, as there's something she would like to discuss with Iki privately. As soon as Yuria leaves, Utria asks what a member of the demon army wants with her. Iki is shocked that she has realized he is a member of the demon army, so he asks what led her to that conclusion. Utria explains that she knows there are no mages from Smo named Iki, but she also knows that Iki is truly powerful. There's no way his name wouldn't be recognized if he were really from Smo. So, during a period when the demon army is fighting against the king's alliance, for a mage like him to come here lying about his origins could only mean that he is from the demon army. Although it's very rare to see a human in the demon army, there are still many things that don't make sense to her. Iki explains that he is indeed human, but he was raised by the immortal King Romberg, so he also considers himself a demon. However, that doesn't mean he has completely abandoned his humanity. Utria asks Iki what he wants from her, and he explains that he hopes to form a trade agreement between the Federation and the demon army. Utria has never heard of a trade treaty being signed between humans and demons before, and she wonders why she would agree to it when the demon's goal is to exterminate humanity. Iki explains to her that although that was the case in the past, things are different now, because the reason he fights is to promote coexistence between humans and demons. Utria has heard that the current demon lord is different, but there's no way to know if the demon army will eventually return to its former ways. Iki is convinced that the demon army will not return to what it once was, but he has no way to prove it, so Utria has nothing more to discuss with him on the matter. She asks Iki if he has any final words before leaving, and he plays his magic card, telling her that he heard she has problems with pirates and that he can take care of it. At first, Utria isn't very convinced, but then she remembers that the pirates have been a major problem for her for a long time. The damage they cause is equivalent to a city's annual budget, so she says she will consider Iki's proposal if he can deal with the pirates and adds a condition. She will only agree to Iki's treaty if he also marries Yuria. Iki is shocked to hear this and says he must be having a stroke or something because Utria's request is completely unexpected. Iki tries to make her reconsider since he is a member of the demon army, but that is exactly why she wants him to marry Yuria. He is intelligent, loyal, and with his abilities will certainly become the leader of the demon army one day, so she wants to build a relationship with him now. At that moment, someone rushes into the room to inform Utria that the pirates are attacking the port again, so they need to act quickly. At the port, the pirates dock their ship and begin looting all goods and women in the area while killing all the men. The pirates are led by Karosa, the pirate king, and not long before they cause damage to the city, Utria asks Iki if he agrees to her terms or not. Iki eventually agrees and runs to the port, as he doesn't know how to teleport. When he arrives, the pirates have already destroyed the port and left. Iki finds the captain of the guard among the rubble, and after helping him stand, he is informed that the port was attacked by a single pirate ship. This is far less than Iki expected, but the captain tells him that the pirates should not be underestimated, as their leader, Karosa, is a mage and always attacks when least expected. Since the pirates have been gone for some time, Iki suggests they prepare for the next attack and plan a counterattack. While preparations are being made, Iki is approached by Yuria, who says she has something important to discuss with him. It's about the marriage, and Iki assumes she must be against the idea. But on the contrary, Yuria is ecstatic because she has been in love with Iki from the moment he saved her, and she really wants him to be her husband. Iki is shocked that she feels such strong emotions for him when they've known each other for less than 12 hours. But Yuria's feelings are genuine. Iki begins to explain that he has nothing against Yuria, but perhaps it is too sudden for them to get married. Sadi has been watching everything from the door and is impressed by Yuria's confidence in proposing marriage despite just meeting Iki. But Sadi is also a little jealous, since she will not be marrying Iki, so she decides to go out shopping and do something productive. While she is out, she is spotted by a pirate hiding in the city who mistakes her for Yuria, as they look very similar. He sneaks up behind her in an alley and knocks her out. Sadi wakes up later on the pirate ship and hears the pirate talking about how he plans to hand her over to the captain so he can get a promotion. But she doesn't want to stay there to find out what they'll do with her, so she starts running in an attempt to return to Iki. However, when she reaches the front deck, she she realizes she is trapped in the middle of the ocean, so she's in big trouble. The captain comes out to see what all the commotion is about, and when he is told he has successfully captured the daughter of Zenobia's leader, he looks at Sadi and realizes she is not Yuria. Still, he decides to keep Sadi around since he wants a promotion anyway. The news of Sadi's capture reaches Utria, and she already knows it must have been the pirates doing, but by this point they have probably sailed out to sea, so finding them will be very difficult. Ikki enters the room and says that he will handle the search himself, but for that, he will need one of Utria's ships. Utria agrees to give him a ship, so once everything is prepared, Ikki sets out to rescue Sadi before anything bad happens. Meanwhile, on the pirate ship, Karosa forces Sadi to wear a maid outfit that he chose himself. Sadi is very embarrassed to have to wear something so revealing, and she asks Karosa why he's making her wear it. Karosa tells her that she is now his maid, so her job is to do everything that makes him happy. And at the moment, seeing her dressed like that makes him very happy. Sadi remembers how her relationship with Ikki began, and how he told her that as his maid, she needed to cook and clean for him. She didn't have much choice back then, but at least Ikki sincerely wanted to protect her. So even though she is trapped with Karosa now, she would still rather work as a maid than do anything degenerate that Karosa has in mind. She asks Karosa if she can just cook a meal for him, and Karosa actually likes the idea. So he tells Sadi she can cook whatever she wants. While Sadi is in the kitchen, she realizes she can't just sit around doing nothing. So she comes up with a plan and asks the pirates assigned to guard her if she could have some alcohol. She says it would enhance the flavor of the meal, and they see nothing wrong with giving her some liquor, as long as it meant the boss would have a tastier meal. Now that Sadi has everything she needs, she pours some alcohol on a steak, and as expected, it ignites. The guards try to intervene to control the fire, but in the chaos, Sadi takes the opportunity to throw alcohol on one of the guards and set him on fire. While the other guard is distracted by his burning friend, Sadi runs to the door, and by the time the guards finally put out the fire, she's already gone. Sadi has managed to escape for now, but she needs to avoid being seen, so noticing two pirates talking, she hides among the cargo until they leave. Once the coast is clear, she steps out and looks inside one of the crates. Inside, she finds all the treasures that were stolen from the city during previous attacks, so she feels obligated to inform Ikki of her discovery, but how she will do that in the middle of the ocean is another matter. She is about to lose hope, then notices a candle nearby. A little later, we see Karosa and his companions preparing to do something cruel to Sadi when she returns. But instead of Sadi, one of the crew comes in and delivers terrible news. The ship is on fire, big fire. The crew is working hard to save it before the entire ship sinks. Sadi did this in hopes that the flames would help Ikki find her, but until then, she needs to do everything possible to remain hidden from the pirates. They know Sadi must be behind the small kitchen incident, but they have lost sight of her for some time and can't find her, as she is already hiding in a barrel. Sadi nervously listens as the pirates say they will search elsewhere, but as soon as she opens the barrel to check if the coast is clear, she is horrified to discover that the pirates were only trying to lure her out of hiding. They are pirates, so of course, they knew they should check every barrel, and now that they've found her, they kick her out of the barrel and plan to make her pay for what she did. Before they can approach, Sadi grabs a barrel lid and throws it at the pirates' faces, creating enough distraction to start running. She has faith that Ikki will come to save her and gains enough time, but while running, one of her legs gets caught a magical trap. She falls, and the one who stops her is Karosa himself. Although he doesn't want to kill her, she set his ship on fire, so he needs to punish her in some way. For now, he decides he will just cut off her leg to teach her a lesson. So he orders his pirates to do it, and a man starts walking towards Sadi with an axe. Sadi is unable to move or defend herself, but fortunately, just as her leg is about to be cut, a strong gust of wind throws the pirate into the air. The fall seems certainly fatal, and Karosa realizes there is someone else on the ship, so he asks the intruder to identify themselves, an intruder revealed to be Ikki. He says he promised to protect Sadi, so he will make the pirates pay for kidnapping her. Sadi runs to Ikki, and Karosa orders his men to attack. However, Ikki summons a lightning strike that electrocutes them until they turn into skeletons. The survivors try to continue the attack, but Ikki simply uses his magic to shield himself before using wind magic to throw all the pirates into the water. Apparently, they clearly cannot swim. Now that most of the pirates have been eliminated, Ikki turns to Sadi and asks if she is okay. She is happy that he came to save her, but at the same time feels like a burden to Ikki. Technically, she was just his servant, so she could simply be discarded at any moment, but Ikki never saw her that way. To him, Sadi was precious, so he would never dream of abandoning her for any reason. Ikki had sailed for a long time searching for Sadi and would have had difficulty locating her if not for the fire she caused. At that moment, Ikki and Sadi hear Karosa acknowledge that Ikki is clearly no ordinary maid, but in the next moment, they are caught in a massive explosion. Ikki manages to defend himself with a magical shield, and Karosa recognizes Ikki's skill, but claims that Sadi was kidnapped fairly, so now she belongs to him. Karosa then casts a powerful water spell, so Ikki grabs Sadi and tries to escape, but he can't get away from the spell and is forced to block it. In the process, a hole opens in the ship, so Ikki jumps inside with Sadi to hide. Karosa thinks Ikki's attempts to hide are useless, since there's nowhere to flee when trapped in the middle of the ocean. He fires another lightning bolt at Ikki, this time seeming like a direct hit. However, when Karosa goes to check if he can see Ikki's body in the water, he is shocked to see Ikki standing up with his own water magic. Ikki tells Karosa that his time as a pirate has come to an end, and in the next moment, Ikki explodes Karosa into pieces along with his ship. The explosion can be seen from the ship Ikki arrived on, and Karosa soon collapses after being rendered unconscious by Ikki's attack. The crew is shocked to see that Karosa has finally been defeated, and realize that it was Ikki's doing. After the remaining members of Karosa's crew are gathered and restrained, Ikki tells Sadi that she is the only reason they managed to accomplish this. If she hadn't created that signal fire, Ikki would never have been able to locate the ship and defeat Karosa. Back in the city, Utria is surprised to hear that Ikki defeated Karosa and moreover, managed to capture him alive, as she had assumed he was dead. She finds it strange that a member of the demon army would be so averse to killing, but who is she to judge, right? Ikki fulfilled his part of the deal by stopping Karosa, so she will honor the agreement and grant Ikki the trade treaty he wanted, though she will still keep it secret, preferring not to antagonize the king's alliance for now. Ikki agrees that the treaty should be kept secret, as long as he can provide the necessary supplies to the demon army. With the agreement reached, Utria wants to discuss the actual terms of the treaty. Meanwhile, the demon army sent on the invasion is suffering many setbacks. Safra has been injured. While she is being treated, she inquires about the food situation. They barely have rations for 3 days, and there is almost no food inside the city walls, so the troops are hungry and morale is very low. Safra realizes this may have been a trap by the enemy to betray them and keep them trapped inside the city while everyone starves. And since there isn't much food left, Safra decides to launch an all-out offensive attack. She is advised not to do this because she's injured, but they don't have many other options, since they can't simply wait to starve to death. Later that night, Ikki is hosting a celebration in honor of Sadi and himself for defeating Karosa. Sadi comes running to compliment his outfit, and he tells her she looks beautiful too, though he thought she'd be resting after all she went through the previous day. But Sadi says she couldn't miss a party in their honor. At that moment, Yuri spots Ikki, so she runs to him and hugs him, happy to see him. She asks Ikki why he left without telling her anything, but Sadi calls her attention and mentions that she shouldn't behave that way in public. Even though they are engaged, Sadi realizes she may have gotten a bit too excited, so she steps back to give Ikki some space. Sadi then approaches Ikki to adjust his coat, and from the way the two interact, Yuri begins to realize that Ikki may see Sadi as more than just his servant. The reception is about to start, so everyone enters, and the party guests immediately recognize Ikki as the man who appeared in the city and became engaged to the leader's daughter. He defeated the strongest pirate and refused to give further details. Ikki, Yuri, and Sadi go up to the second floor, where Utria is waiting, and as soon as she sees them, she compliments Yuri for looking especially beautiful today and asks Ikki to take good care of her from now on. Ikki is confused about what she means, so Utria explains that while the treaty may have been finalized, Ikki still needs to fulfill Utria's other condition, marrying Yuri. At that moment, an announcement is made revealing that this party is actually a betrothal ceremony for Yuri and Ikki, and that she did not expect things to happen so quickly. But Utria tells him that if he refuses, she will cancel the treaty, so it seems he doesn't have much choice. However, before the ceremony can officially begin, a blinding light fills the halls so that no one but Ikki can see anything. Through the light, the demon lord appears and tells Ikki that he needs to return because Saphira is in grave danger. Darokuten explains that Saphira has managed to conquer Lesta, but it turned out to be a trap by the Alliance. The enemy lured her into the castle and surrounded the city so that there is no chance of escape. Ikki asks how many enemy troops there are, and Darokuten replies that there are about 5,000, but very little time, so Ikki needs to act quickly. She did everything she could to prepare Ikki Ikki's brigade to be deployed, and before anyone says anything, yes, she has the power to save Saphira on her own, but she wants Ikki to be the one to do it just to disrupt the poor guy at his party. Anyway, outside Utria, General Rudiu is informed that the city will inevitably fall sooner or later, as it is under immense pressure, so Rudiu decides to lead the next attack team. Meanwhile, inside the city walls, Fiorentina is doing her best to hold back the human army forces and orders the remaining ogre soldiers to do their best to stop the humans from invading the area. Unfortunately, the humans have archers among their ranks, so they manage to take down many ogres before they get a chance to fight. Fiorentina manages to protect herself from all the arrows, so she advances against the human soldiers and begins eliminating them one by one. She is still capable of defeating humans on her own, but in the next moment, she is struck by a lightning bolt cast by a human mage. The man compliments Fiorentina for being quite resilient, but says this is the most she'll be able to do while he's around. Back in Valias, Ikki and Sadi arrive through teleportation magic, and Sadi is impressed with the convenience of teleportation magic, but she is even happier that Ikki's engagement to Yuria has been postponed. Although Ikki still intends to return to Zenobia, he can teleport there whenever he wants. A few moments later, Jyrn rushes into Ikki's office as soon as he notices he's back. He seems genuinely worried about something, so Ikki asks for detail. Jyrn explains that the King's Alliance launched a full-scale attack on Valias while Ikki was away. The city is in terrible condition. Many people were seriously injured during the attack. Ikki can't believe that the Alliance would also attack Valias. The city would have been completely taken if they hadn't been saved. Though it may be hard to believe, Jyrn tells Ikki that the one who saved Valias was a young woman. This girl was extremely powerful and defeated all the enemy forces on her own. Ikki now understands the situation and tells Jyrn that he will go to Alesta immediately to support Saphira. He needs to know how many troops are available from now on. Jyrn says that about 100 soldiers were injured during the last battle, so they have only about 500 in good condition to fight, but they still need to leave some soldiers there in case they are attacked again. This estimate of 500 soldiers is probably an exaggeration. He asks Ikki how many soldiers the enemy has. Ikki replies that they are facing 5,000, and to be honest, their chances of victory don't look good. Things would have been easier if other brigade leaders were here, but they all have other missions elsewhere, so they will have to enter this battle alone. At that moment, the Dwarf King enters Ikki's office and says that he might be able to repay his debt by helping him with this problem. Ikki tells the king that there is no need for him to do anything, as all the weapons he and his people have made have been more than enough to repay Ikki. But the king feels obliged to do something more after all the kindness Ikki has shown him. Along with his artisans, there are also hundreds of dwarf warriors here, so they can serve him well in battle. Ikki asks the king if he's really okay with this, since the battle he is fighting has nothing to do with the dwarves, but on the contrary, the king is very interested in the outcome of this battle. If the demon army succeeds in unifying the world, it will benefit many dwarves, as Ikki promised to create a country for them. Ikki acknowledges that he made this promise, but the demon army is currently struggling, so he might not be able to fulfill it. The king says he doesn't mind, because if the demon army loses somehow, then so be it. But Ikki has given a lot to all the dwarves wandering the earth, so at the very least, the king wants to stick with Ikki until the end to repay that. Ikki thanks the king and agrees to accept his help, but it seems the king isn't the only one who wants to offer help to Ikki, as all the unharmed humans of Valias are also willing to assist and fight. Ikki asks if they're sure they want to fight alongside him, since that would mean fighting the demon army. The people tell Ikki that they don't know how long this war could last, so they want to fight with their own hands and protect their homes. The previous ruler of Avalias imposed impossible taxes on the people, and the situation became so dire that they were working themselves to death just to meet the quotas. But under Ikki's rule, life in this city has become better than ever. Their resentment toward demons had long since disappeared, especially after the last battle, when the demons actively sacrificed their lives just to ensure the humans could reach safety. Without Ikki's intervention, the people probably wouldn't have survived to see this day, and for that, they owe him at least that much. Jyrn is still against the idea of accepting help from the humans, but Lilyfield knocks him to the ground for having the audacity to try to tell Ikki what to do. Sadi also joins the argument to criticize him for his foolish behavior, and when it's over, Jyrn is lying on the ground questioning his life choices. As Ikki addresses everyone who said they would join him in battle, he tells them that he will divide his forces into two. One group will go to Eltria with him, and the other group will stay behind to protect Avalias. But he has some special instructions for the group that remains. He tells them that it's possible the King's Alliance may attack again while Ikki is away, and if that happens, Ikki knows very well they won't be able to win. So he tells them to surrender immediately, and if they try to resist, the Alliance will kill them. Under no circumstances should they antagonize the King's Alliance. The next morning, Iki and his troops depart to begin their journey to Alesta. This trip will take about 4 days to reach by land. Thanks to everyone's support, Iki's army has grown, but the enemy in Alesta still outnumbers them, so he needs to devise a strategy to overcome this disadvantage. He can only hope that Safra and the others can hold out until he arrives. Meanwhile, in Alesta, Safra is doing her best to keep the humans at bay, but they are being slowly overwhelmed due to the massive numerical difference. Safra needs to find a way to save the humans, and she has to separate the soldiers inside the walls from those outside. Otherwise, it won't be long before the demons are defeated. Standing on the battlefield, she considers launching an immediate attack, but she can't do so until the ogres are out of the way, as she doesn't want to cause casualties. She decides to attack the troops outside the wall, but when she approaches them, she is struck in the air and slammed to the ground by the mage. He orders his men to approach and capture Safra, but she won't be defeated so easily. She casts a divine spell that grabs all the soldiers so she can escape. She uses the vines to shield herself from the human mage's attacks, managing to flee to a nearby rooftop, but the constant use of mana is taking a toll on her body. She tries to hold on a little longer to eliminate the soldiers on the other side of the wall, but in the middle of casting her spell, she is struck in the chest by General Rudio and falls to the ground, where she is later captured. The next morning, Safra's troops have been almost completely wiped out, and the soldiers are now trying to figure out which body parts to take to get better rewards. One of the surviving demons tries to get up and at least take out some of the unsuspecting humans. However, he is burned to ashes by a human mage who really enjoys his work. Safra is locked in the dungeon, and Rudio is heading there to see her. The man assigned to guard her assures Rudio that Safra is still alive, but suggests killing her immediately, as there's no reason to keep her alive. Rudio mentions that he has met Safra before, and Safra remembers that he was the soldier she delayed during the first battle against the Alliance. She kind of regrets not having killed him back then, but there's nothing she can do about it now. Rudio mentions that he has heard a lot about one of Safra's subordinates and is certain that no good subordinate would stand idle if their commander were captured. Safra realizes that Rudio intends to use her as bait to lure Iki and kill him as well. Rudio reveals that he has orders to eliminate all members of the 7th Brigade, but until the day he eliminates all the others, he will ensure Safra's safety as a professional courtesy. Meanwhile, Iki and his group are on their way to Alesta, and at the same time, Iki tries to devise a strategy that won't result in the annihilation of his team. After several days of travel, Iki's group takes a break, and Iki is still working on a winning strategy when the Dwarf King decides to visit him. The Dwarf King explains that the demons and humans have learned to work together, and that all the prototype weapons requested by Iki have been manufactured. Iki thanks him for all the help, but the king says there's no need for praise, although he has something to ask. He's not in a hurry to start fighting or anything like that, but since they are very close to Alesta, he would like to know when Iki plans to announce the battle. Iki tells him that the situation is still serious, which is why he sent Jyrn to do reconnaissance and assess what they are getting into. Jyrn returns from his reconnaissance mission with terrible news to share. He takes Iki to a higher vantage point so he can see the city walls. When he does, he sees Safra's clothes hanging on a post. Although this definitely means that Safra has been defeated, Iki believes she must still be alive. Feeding 5,000 men isn't easy, so the Alliance undoubtedly wants to end the battle as quickly as possible. The fastest way to do that is to lure the other brigade members as bait so that they cannot be ignored. However, even knowing that Safra is alive, they have no idea whether she is being tortured or not at this moment. Therefore, even knowing it's a trap, they have no choice but to attack to save Safra as quickly as possible. They need to discuss their strategy before launching the attack. But before that, Iki will ask the three for help, and once everything is ready, they will launch their assault at dawn the next day. On the day of the attack, a human guard is assigned to watch, and he is minding his own life when suddenly, a green Hazengun appears out of nowhere and is fired directly at the tower. They realize it's an enemy attack, so the soldiers begin preparing countermeasures to stop it. But the firepower is far more extreme than anything they are equipped to handle. Rudio requests a report on the situation, and is informed that part of the wall has been destroyed, but there are only 500 enemy soldiers, so there's not much cause for concern. Rudio reminds his vice commander not to underestimate the enemy and to face them cautiously. The humans begin firing their catapults at the demon army, causing considerable damage, but Iki manages to raise a shield to defend his soldiers and tells them that they only need to hold out until Safra and all the other wounded demons inside the castle can escape. After a few minutes of attack, Rudio orders his men to intensify the assault, sensing that something is wrong with this battle. On the surface, it seems it would be an easy victory for them if they attacked Iki with their main force, but they cannot figure out what Iki is planning. Normally, Iki should be trying to breach the city defenses to rescue Safra, but his squad has barely moved. They don't have enough men or firepower to carry out a rescue operation. Ikki is a skilled commander, so he must have realized this too, which means he has a different plan in mind. Hudeo asks his vice about the situation of the prisoners in the dungeon. The vice commander assures him that the supervision is strict, but as a precaution, Hudeo orders Vadel to be sent there as reinforcement. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, one of the guards is dismissed from duty, but as he walks away, his shadow lingers and slides into the cell door. Inside the cell, the new guard taunts Safra, saying that her allies have arrived, but that he is sure they will all be exterminated soon. At the same time, he plans to carry out cruel and unusual tortures on her for his own amusement. However, before he can do anything, he is grabbed from behind by Lilith, who drains his life directly from his body. Once the man is incapacitated, Lilith kneels before Safra and apologizes for taking so long to rescue her. Outside, Ikki notices that Hudeo has stopped attacking, so he must have realized the plan somehow. Haya asks if it's time for them to attack at full strength, but Ikki says they need a little more patience. They still need to buy more time, so Ikki launches a gust of wind at the wall, trying to force Hudeo to react. Hudeo knows what Ikki is trying to do, so he requests an update on the status of the troops at his disposal. He is informed that his infantry, cavalry, and archers are all ready to attack immediately. With this, he is confident that Ikki's team will not advance further, so he orders his men to resume the attack. He intends to slowly wear down Ikki's squad until he can annihilate them. But as the attack unfolds, the soldiers Hudeo assigned to guard Fiorentina and the other demons begin to worry that things may soon get out of control. They thought it would be safer to simply kill all the prisoners so they wouldn't have to worry about the possibility of them escaping. It was a very clever idea on their part, but before they could put it into practice, a spell was cast on them, causing them to fall asleep. As soon as they collapse, Lilith approaches, holding Safra. Fiorentina is overjoyed to see that Safra is unharmed, so she runs to her and apologizes for not being able to save her from capture. However, Safra tells Fiorentina not to worry and that she has nothing to apologize for, as she's happy that everyone is alive. Lilith tells them there's no more time for a meeting, so Fiorentina stands and says she'll leave the rest for Lilith to handle. However, in the next moment, Fiorentina is struck in the back by an arrow, causing her already weakened body to collapse. The arrow was fired by Vadel's squad, sent to ensure that the prisoners could not escape. With all the men he has, he plans to make sure that no demons survive. He expected them to shrink in fear, but surprisingly, Lilith simply begins to laugh hysterically, because everything is happening exactly as Ikki said it would. Vadel doesn't understand what she means, so Lilith turns her attention to the left, where Jiran is standing right next to him. Vadel is shocked and asks how Jiran got there, but Jiran simply replies that he entered through the front door, though he used some magic tricks. At the same time, Lilith uses magic to send a signal to Ikki. As soon as he receives it, he uses teleportation magic to transport the firing squad inside the castle along with Jiran. Vadel recognizes the weapons and knows how deadly they are, but it's too late to warn his troops. The soldiers end up being shot and killed by the dozens. When the firing squad finally runs out of ammunition, Vadel tries to get the remaining troops to attack, but it doesn't go as planned. Since the remaining orcs begin destroying him, he is completely wiped out, and Lilith tells the orcs not to overdo it, as there are other things to do before escaping. Meanwhile, Safra sits with Fiorentina, trying to keep her from dying, but Fiorentina apologizes to Safra again for failing her before fainting. Safra is furious at losing her subordinate, while Vadel orders his men to continue fighting the demon. Safra makes her wand explode before stepping on his throat and unleashing all her fury. And one thing is for sure, his head will never be normal again after that stomp. The soldiers see what she did to Vadel and make the smart decision to flee immediately. But even after killing Vadel, Safra isn't satisfied, and she's about to chase down and kill all the remaining soldiers. However, before she can do that, Lilith places herself in front of her, begging Safra to wait because it's something she needs to do. Safra isn't very interested in listening at first, but when she hears that it's a request from Ikki, she calms down a little and agrees to hear her out. At the same time, Jiren takes Fiorentina's body and informs Safra that she isn't dead yet and that he would like to take her to receive medical attention as soon as possible. He then pleads with the others to continue the mission without him. Sometime later, Rudio receives news that demons have managed to breach the city wall, free the prisoners, and that intruders also appeared out of nowhere. Rudio believes this must be the result of Ikki's magic. At that moment, they hear a loud crash inside the walls and see Jiren's firing squad continuing to create holes in the human soldiers they encounter. In addition, the Dwarf King blows up all the heavy artillery, and the demons are sent to inflict even more damage on the human forces, causing Rudio's plan to collapse completely. After properly devastating the human troops, Jiren says it's time to leave, firing a signal pistol into the air as a sign for Ikki. As soon as Ikki sees it, he tells the king that it's his turn to attack. The king has prepared several barrels of gunpowder, and the gargoyles of the force carry these barrels with the intention of dropping them on the human forces. Gyron and Lilith know what's coming, so they tell all their allies to stop fighting and escape through the wall gaps before it's too late. Rudio sees the gargoyles flying above him with suspicious barrels and isn't sure what they're doing, but he knows it's not good, so he orders his men to retreat immediately. Moments later, the gargoyles begin dropping the barrels, and as soon as they hit the ground, they explode in a massive fire wave, destroying even more of Rudio's defensive structures. By this point, Rudio's troops were completely in disarray, and Ikki saw this as the perfect opportunity to launch a full-scale offensive. He ordered his men to advance, and Rudio was busy trying to control the damage after the losses he had just suffered. But he didn't have time to reorganize, as he was soon informed that Ikki had launched an attack. He knew he had no chance of winning a direct confrontation at this moment, so Rudio ordered all his troops to retreat immediately. He may have lost the battle today, but he promised himself that he would return someday and ensure that he would never lose to Ikki again. After all the fighting ended, the demon army occupied the entire city and began making plans to rebuild it. The other commanders and squads had already arrived and were surprised to see humans alongside demons in the castle. Safra explained that those were the citizens of Ailas who had decided to come and help. It was thanks to them that Safra survived, so they should be treated as comrades and respected from now on. Fiorentina also managed to fully recover from her injuries, so everything ended well in the end. But the squad leaders felt terrible for not helping while their commander was captured. Safra told them it wasn't their fault, as it was she who sent them to fight on other fronts and ended up being captured. At that moment, Gyron ran into the tent and said he had just received a letter from one of Huter's messengers. The messenger was outside, near the gate, so at first the leaders wanted to kill him. But this character, whose name I forgot, said they should at least read the contents of the letter first. Ikki opened the letter, and it basically spoke about how Huter respected him as a worthy rival. In it, Huter told Ikki it had been a good game and that he hoped to fight him again someday in the future. Ikki thought Huter was exaggerating a bit by sending a congratulatory letter while they were still enemies, but putting that aside, he recognized that Huter had managed to capture Safra easily and could have killed her at any moment before Ikki's arrival. Safra considered it one of her worst failures, and Ikki told her that luck often plays an important role on the battlefield. But the way Huter led his army had almost nothing to do with luck. From the way he captured Safra to the way he retreated once he realized he couldn't win, it was all precisely calculated. His decision-making had always been fast and accurate, so if it weren't for the new and unique inventions Gunther had provided, Ikki wasn't sure he could have won that battle. Ikki wanted to send a response to Huter's letter, so he wrote about how impressed he was with his decision-making and leadership. As for meeting again, Ikki hoped they could meet one day as friends rather than enemies. He then handed the letter to Huter's messenger. Safra officially congratulated him on yet another great success, but honestly, she knew that Ikki had no obligation to come and save her, especially knowing it was a trap. Ikki told Safra that it was the demon lord himself who had ordered him to rescue her and that he had no reason to refuse, especially since he had known Safra for a long time. At that moment, they heard a great commotion outside. They went out to check and saw the demon lord standing there. And even more surprising, Gyron was speaking to her as if she were a little girl, asking her to leave since this was an active battlefield. Ikki saw this and ran desperately to push Gyron aside, apologizing for his subordinate's rude behavior. He told Gyron that this girl was the demon lord herself, and Gyron was shocked, as all the rumors had described her as the demon lady, fierce and terrifying. Ikki apologized to Dariokutin once again for the actions of his subordinate, but she said it was fine, since there were many demons who didn't know her true self. At that moment, Gyron realized that Dariokutin was the mysterious girl who had single-handedly saved Valia a few days ago, which now made total sense, as she was truly very powerful. The demon lord addressed all the members of the brigade present and told Safra that she had performed well in this battle. Safra didn't believe she deserved praise, as her mistake had caused her and her troops to be captured. But regardless, she had still done a fantastic job, resisting for several days without supplies until Ikki arrived. Dariokutin gave her credit for that. She continued by saying that all the members had performed very well in this war, but among them, Ikki contributed the most, so she wants to praise him especially, and Ikki thanks her, but has a bad feeling about where this is going. Dariokutin then says that he is too talented to remain in command of a single brigade, so she is appointing Ikki as the new commander of the 8th Corps, and this time he has no right to refuse. And so ends our summary. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave an Ikki and share. Subscribe to the channel and comment Mawu-sama down below to help us with engagement. God bless. See you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.